Chapter 364. A great battle is imminent. Solitary Eagle snorted and took the lead to step forward. He then cupped his fists and said, "Venerable May, I, Solitary Eagle, have come to ask for advice." His voice was as sonorous as metal. Solitary Eagle was ranked last amongst the great masters. However, he was the most combative person in his life. Moreover, he had experienced an even more frightening aura from a mysterious expert. Venerable May's strength was equally astonishing. Solitary Eagle was amazed, but he didn't feel much fear. In fact, his state of mind was above Yuren's. The great master of life and death, Shi Changshao, followed closely behind. He smiled warmly. "Venerable May, I am Shi Changshao." Lei Wu Bei had just retreated. He stood there for a moment with a calm face. Then, he slowly walked forward and spoke with a cold face. "Venerable May, I don't think I need to introduce myself, right?" "Very well. Are there only 3 of you?" Venerable May snorted. He couldn't help but feel disappointed. These 3 men's combined strength was equivalent to that of the Crane King, the Bear King, and the Snake King's combined strength. In fact, they were even weaker. So, they weren't a match for Venerable May. In fact, they could barely contend with him. "Wait, this old man will also participate in this battle." A sorrowful and indignant roar resounded. Li Ju Tian trembled as he stood up. Li Ju Tian had sustained serious injuries, but he was still one of the 8 great masters. He had endured the humiliation and had endured the pain. He hadn't left just for this moment. Li Ju Tian only had this one opportunity to regain his reputation against Venerable May. In fact, it might even be his last opportunity to redeem his reputation. He could only rely on the strength of the other 3 great masters to defeat Venerable May in one fell swoop. Only then could he wash away his shame. In fact, he could even go one step further. Li Ju Tian knew that it would be impossible for him to fight alone if he missed this opportunity. Therefore, he had received serious injuries. Many of his bones had been fractured, and his internal injuries weren't light either. However, he had managed to restore his broken bones to their original positions during the fight between the Snake King and Lei Wu Bei. Then he had forcibly activated his self-mutilating secret technique, the art of defying the heavens. He had sacrificed his life to restore his body to its optimal state. Moreover, he had used his exquisite Xian Qi to firmly control his broken bones. This battle was Li Ju Tian's last. He would have to cut off all means of retreat. No matter what, they had to achieve the most brilliant results in this battle and display the most awe-inspiring might. Venerable May, as the saying goes, every dog has its day. Let me return the favor you gave me a few days ago. Li Ju Tian gasped for breath as he fiercely glared at Venerable May. It seemed as if he was looking at his mortal enemy. In fact, the enmity between the 2 of them was so great that they couldn't live under the same sky. In fact, there was no room for reconciliation. Venerable May hadn't reached this point since he was the victor. But Li Ju Tian would never be able to get rid of this shame and humiliation in this life unless he could defeat Venerable May. "Li Ju Tian, are you planning to fight me?" Venerable May was able to see how Li Ju Tian had managed to stand up from his serious injuries. So, she couldn't help but feel pity for him. She knew that Li Ju Tian was completely innocent. However, he had been caught in the crossfire twice when her temper had been at its worst. In fact, he had been caught in the crossfire like an innocent bystander. And these 2 times have been the most depressing, painful, and indignant moments of her life. So, she had urgently needed someone to vent her anger on. And Li Ju Tian was the 2nd great master. So, he had taken up the responsibility. Li Ju Tian was the most suitable candidate at that time, whether it was his status or his Xian cultivation. Therefore, Li Ju Tian's tragedy had befallen him, and he had unwittingly brought this tragedy upon himself. That's because a scholar can be killed, but not humiliated. Venerable May naturally understood this truth. But he had grabbed Li Ju Tian's neck and slapped him in front of the eyes of tens of thousands of people. And He had thoroughly destroyed Li Ju Tian's reputation as the second great master. It would be the strangest thing if he didn't fight him to the death. Based on his actual strength, it was originally hopeless for him in this lifetime. Yet, there was such an excellent opportunity to join hands with a supreme martial artist. How could he let go of this last chance? Is it worth it? Venerable Mei looked apologetic as he reminded Li Ju Tian, you should be very clear about the price you have to pay to use the art of defying the heavens. You've sacrificed so much in one go. So, do you really not want to reconsider? You only need to disperse your strength if you regret it now. Then, you can recover in 3 to 5 months. There's still time. No, it's too late. It's too late. Li Ju Tian's eyes blazed as he spoke in a mournful tone. Venerable Mei, are you afraid? You should know that it's already too late the moment your slap fell on my face. I, Li Ju Tian, am a man of prestige. There's only one way to wash away this humiliation. There's no other way. Oh, afraid? I'm afraid of you? You want to wash away this humiliation? Are you planning to take my life? Venerable Mei smiled in a relaxed manner. His black robe gently swayed in the wind. That's right. Li Ju Tian spoke up in a serious manner. Venerable Mei, please don't be stingy with your head for the sake of this Li's reputation. Don't be stingy with your head? Li Ju Tian, you're advising me not to be stingy with my head. But you're stingy with your insignificant reputation? Do you know that your reputation isn't worth mentioning in my eyes? My advice to you is a pity and charity for a weakling. It's rare that I'm in a good mood. But you've misunderstood it as fear. I shouldn't have called you a frog in a well or a naive one. Venerable Mei couldn't help but laugh mockingly. He then shook his head and said, Li Ju Tian, I'll give you my head if you have the ability to do so. I'm afraid that you'll be the one to lose your head. Venerable Mei, it's still too early to make a conclusion about who'll be the one to lose his head. Li Ju Tian snorted, Venerable Mei is right. My reputation may not be worth much in Venerable Mei's eyes, but it's more important than my head. I'm afraid that the rankings of the 8 great masters will change after today's battle. Venerable Mei's entire body was shrouded in a black robe as he spoke up in an indifferent manner. He seemed disappointed and frustrated. I've been apprehensive about the great master Bu Kuangfeng's reputation for so many years. The divine swordsman of the fierce Gale Feng, Wan Yun's cultivation has been sufficient for a long time. But he hasn't been able to become a great master. The 8 great masters will be vacant after today. So, Feng Wanyin won't be able to retreat even if he wants to. Bu Kuangfeng smiled from afar. The title of Great Master Fierce Gale no longer belongs to me. Venerable Mei, you're looking down on me with your words. Venerable Mei snorted and smiled, but this cold-blooded great master still has the guts to besiege me after the battle. So, he's probably here to die as a scapegoat, right? I really don't know what position he's coming from. Do you really think that I won't kill? Venerable Mei's psychological attack could be said to be very powerful. He had attacked Li Ju Tian and had hit the nail on the head by pointing out the real reason why the divine swordsman of the fierce Gale Feng, Wan Yun, couldn't become a great master. His purpose was to attack Solitary Eagle's fighting spirit. He's willing to be on the same level as you. In fact, he's even willing to take a step back. It's not that he's inferior to you. He could have become a great master a long time ago. But you've taken advantage of him because he's a great master. It had to be said that Solitary Eagle's heart was shaken as he heard these words. Then, Venerable Mei turned his attention to Lei Wu Bei. He pointed out that Lei Wu Bei was injured. Lei Wu Bei wouldn't be able to make up the numbers, even if he were to come forward. Moreover, he would be sacrificed as a shield by the other great masters. These words might not have had such an obvious effect on other people. But Lei Wu Bei had always been a very suspicious person. Lei Wu Bei thought that everyone in the world was his enemy. So, these words had touched the bottom of his heart. In fact, they had gone straight to his heart. This was the reason why he had hesitated earlier. The competition between the great masters was also very fierce. He could have sacrificed Lei Wu Bei to save himself in a time of crisis. He could have eliminated his competitors. Moreover, he could have taken advantage of the situation to create an opportunity for himself. And he could have become famous in one fell swoop. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing? However, Lei Wu Bei had obtained the halo of the continent's hero. So, he had no choice but to come forward even if he knew that it would be risky. However, Lei Wu Bei's complexion changed as soon as Venerable Mei's words left Solitary Eagle's mouth. The halo of the continent's hero was certainly glorious, but it was only an inconspicuous decoration for a dead man. Venerable Mei's psychological attack is very incisive. I admire it, but I'm afraid that Venerable Mei has chosen the wrong target. Shi Changxiao chuckled and said, "The four of us are veterans of hundreds of battles, and any one of us can be said to be the originator of psychological attacks. But isn't Venerable Mei underestimating us by using this trick in front of us? Moreover, the four of us are of one mind, and we're shouldering the responsibility of millions upon millions of people of the continent. So, how can we fall for Venerable Mei's provocation? Let me ask you, if Venerable Mei really had such great confidence in herself, would she have wasted her breath like this?" The other two men came to their senses as soon as he said this. Li Ju Tian ferociously shouted and said, "Words are useless. Let's see who's the real deal. Today, let the four of us experience the power of the so-called Lord of Tian Fa, the 10,000 Beasts Venerable One." He laughed loudly and took the lead to rush out despite his serious injuries. Someone had to make the first move in a battle between 5 people, and the first person to make the first move would often be at a disadvantage. So, he would be met with a head-on attack, but it would create an opportunity for the others. Shi Changxiao's words had dispelled Venerable Mei's psychological attack, but the 4 great masters weren't afraid of Venerable Mei's tyrannical methods, so they had no choice but to fight at the moment. Moreover, the other 3 great masters wouldn't feel bad even if they were to lose this battle. But Li Ju Tian couldn't. Half of his Shui Hun Manor strength had been destroyed in the war between the humans and the beasts. Moreover, he had been humiliated by Venerable Mei. Moreover, he had disregarded the safety of the continent's people and had schemed against Jun Wui. His reputation had been swept to the ground, and he had been deserted. So, everything would vanish if he couldn't defeat Venerable Mei. Chapter 365. Second watch of the 30th. Shi Changxiao, Solitary Eagle, and Lei Wu Bei didn't dare to neglect Li Ju Tian's charge. They quickly shifted their positions and took up their positions in a split second. Then they attacked in sequence. They hadn't discussed any strategy beforehand, but which one of them wasn't a veteran of 100 battles? Everyone's position was the best for coordinating with the other two. Moreover, it was the best position for Li Ju Tian. Li Ju Tian's figure gradually faded as he rushed forward. He had attacked at the fastest speed possible. Venerable Mei snorted and punched out. Li Ju Tian's body shrank and arrived in front of Venerable Mei. But he slid to the side like a loach and retreated diagonally. Then, 2 fists suddenly shot out from his original position and collided with Venerable Mei's fist. Solitary Eagle soared into the sky at the same time. He unleashed his eagle agility technique at full speed and swooped down from the sky. 9 claws of the ghostly eagle. First move. Lei Wu Bei's black blade shone once again. It drilled out from under Shi Changxiao's ribs and pierced towards Venerable Mei's chest. It enveloped a radius of 5 feet around his upper body. This was a battle of honor and life. So, he had to fight even if he was stingy with his treasure blade. Meanwhile, Li Ju Tian's retreating figure turned around at a high speed like a spinning top. He changed the momentum of his retreat and returned to launch another fierce attack from Li Ju Tian's side. The 4 men attacked first and then followed, but their coordination could be said to be seamless. Their attacks were aimed at Venerable Mei's vital points. Moreover, each of their attacks was strange and unpredictable. On the surface, It seemed as if the four of them were using simple punches and kicks. But Venerable May was well aware that no matter which one of them she faced, it would turn into a torrential torrent of complicated attacks. And she would be entangled by the other party in a very short time. As for the other three's true trump cards, they would be unleashed the instant he was entangled in the battle. Venerable May didn't dare to be careless in the face of the four great masters. He let out a long roar and spun his body to avoid Shi Changxiao's fists. His black robe whirled and deflected Lei Wu Bei's blade. Then he turned around and moved his body sideways. He hadn't retracted his fist, but it was still aimed at Li Ju Tian. Then he raised his left hand and threw out a powerful cannonball to meet Solitary Eagle. Venerable May didn't panic, even though she was being besieged by four great masters at the same time. In fact, she had calmly neutralized their attacks in an instant. Moreover, she hadn't shown any weakness in her counterattack. Li Ju Tian clenched his teeth and increased his speed. He knew that one of the four men would have to sacrifice his strength to fight against Venerable May. Then, the other three would be able to take advantage of this opportunity to surround him. The other three didn't have the courage to do so, and they wouldn't do so. Moreover, Li Ju Tian's injuries wouldn't last long. So, he had no choice but to do it himself. Li Ju Tian's hatred for Venerable May had pushed him to make this crazy decision. His knuckles crackled, and a faint layer of green energy shrouded his fist. It was evident that he had put all of his strength into this punch. He wanted to fight against Venerable May without any tricks. He had calculated that Venerable May would have been like an arrow at the end of its flight after he had forced the other three men to retreat. So, he would have had no choice but to fight against him. Li Ju Tian would have had only one choice if he had been in Venerable May's position. Venerable May's complexion turned cold. She withdrew her fist in the time it takes for a spark to fly off of a flint. Then, she punched again and met Li Ju Tian's attack with a void-splitting fist. Then, she roared and kicked her legs 49 times in a row. Her entire body rose into the air and soared into the sky like a cannonball. The three people below were still distracted by this attack, but the sound of firecrackers had already been heard in the sky. Venerable May and the Solitary Falcon had exchanged 7 or 8 moves at lightning speed. Two shadows flashed at the same time. Solitary Eagle somersaulted in the sky. Venerable May descended in a beautiful trajectory. However, he suddenly turned upside down as he fell. Then he extended his wide sleeves and abandoned Shi Changxiao and Lei Wu Bei. Then he ferociously pounced towards Li Ju Tian. Anyone could see that Venerable May was advancing with an indomitable momentum. It was clear that he wanted to take advantage of Li Ju Tian's serious injuries to get rid of this abominable and troublesome guy. Li Ju Tian shouted and retreated at lightning speed. He had hoped to fight against Venerable May, but it was extremely irrational to do so at this time. Venerable May had shaken off the others, so it was tantamount to a one-on-one fight. Li Ju Tian had also lost his balance. His strength had been exhausted, and he hadn't recovered yet. So, Venerable May could easily dodge his attack, even if he were to risk his life. Moreover, the Solitary Eagle had been struck in the sky. So, the threat in the sky had been temporarily eliminated. Therefore, Li Ju Tian could only retreat. Oh no! Lei Baoyu and Bu Kuang Feng slapped their thighs as they watched the fight from afar. Li Ju Tian retreated, but he was surprised to find that Venerable May hadn't chased after him. In fact, he hadn't even moved out of inertia. It seemed as if his body was being pulled by a string in the sky. He flew straight towards Shi Changxiao. His body hadn't even reached him when his legs suddenly kicked like a storm. Venerable May's real target wasn't Li Ju Tian. It was the great master of life and death, Shi Changxiao. Shi Changxiao was the biggest threat to him on the ground. He was the only one among the three on the ground who hadn't sustained any injuries. It was clear that Venerable May wanted to give this uninjured person the same treatment as the other two. Shi Changxiao's face turned misty. His eyes seemed to have turned petrified. Even his black pupils seemed to have turned white. He shouted loudly and punched out with both his fists. It was a head-on collision. Shi Changxiao couldn't retreat because Lei Wu Bei was standing behind him. Lei Wu Bei would have suffered if he had retreated. In fact, Lei Wu Bei had just been injured. So, he wouldn't have had the strength to fight back if he'd been hit by this move. Venerable Mei's 2 kicks had caused the air to vibrate and ripple. They weren't ordinary kicks. The 4-man battle formation would be broken if Lei Wu Bei were to be knocked out of the fight. Then, the 3 of them would be defeated. Therefore, Shi Changxiao could only choose to face it head-on. Bang! Venerable Mei's first kick landed on Shi Changxiao's fist. Shi Changxiao's entire body shook. He hastily withdrew his fist. He wanted to disperse the force of the kick. He wanted to throw another punch. However, Venerable Mei's second kick landed on Shi Changxiao's fist before he could withdraw it. Shi Changxiao was startled. He hastily raised his left fist and took advantage of the fact that his body hadn't been knocked back yet. However, Venerable Mei's third kick had already landed on his right fist before his left hand could reach its target. It was accompanied by a thunderous force. It was still the same fist. There was almost no pause in between these 3 consecutive kicks. It seemed as if Venerable Mei had grown 3 feet to attack at the same time. Moreover, each kick was stronger than the previous one. Shi Changxiao's body was on the verge of collapse. He couldn't help but take a step back. His left fist finally arrived at this moment. However, Venerable Mei's left leg, which had been waiting for a long time, also kicked out. Venerable Mei's body hadn't yet landed on the ground. Bang! His left fist and Venerable Mei's left foot collided with each other. A loud sound was heard. Then, the scene of his right fist replayed itself. He kicked 3 times in succession. Venerable Mei's legs were separated like a pair of scissors. However, each of his kicks was as heavy as a mountain. Shi Changxiao felt a sweet taste in his mouth. He felt as if his internal organs had been shaken. He staggered back. He felt an itch in his nose. Then a thin wisp of blood spurted out. I finally sustained internal injuries. Lei Wu Bei didn't disappoint the opportunity that Shi Changxiao had created by risking his injuries. Lei Wu Bei's body flashed like a ghost. The long blade in his hand pierced through Venerable Mei's black robe with an irresistible force. Lei Wu Bei didn't have the time to rejoice at the success of his attack. However, he suddenly discovered that there was a feeling of emptiness after he had pierced through the robe. Lei Wu Bei's heart stirred. However, he felt as if something had blocked him. Then, he saw Venerable Mei's left hand stretch out of the black robe. His palm firmly grasped the blade's edge. Then, he ferociously pushed it forward. Her hand gripped the blade of the godly weapon. She grabbed the serrated edge of the blade. However, it didn't seem as if there was any hindrance to it. Then, Li Ju Tian and the solitary falcon pounced forward in a frenzy. One of them was in front, and the other was behind. Venerable Mei grasped the blade with her left hand. She took advantage of the fact that Lei Wu Bei was trying to cut her hand by twisting the blade. She bent her index finger and flicked it 3 times against the direction of the force of the blade. Then, Venerable Mei's body fell to the ground. Her black robe fluttered behind her like an oversized iron plate. Then, she pushed it towards Li Ju Tian's back. Her 2 hands changed into thousands of palm shadows in an instant. The wind and clouds whistled as 100 palms converged to form a lustrous white triangle. It seemed as if they were carrying a vast and mighty momentum. Then, the solitary eagle was hit high into the sky. Venerable Mei had used her fingers to flick Lei Wu Bei's blade 3 times. However, Lei Wu Bei felt as if his heart had been struck by 3 loud bangs. It felt as if someone had taken an iron hammer and pounded it 3 times on his chest. Lei Wu Bei's vision blurred, and he fell into a trance. However, he couldn't control his body. Venerable Mei's strong wind had pushed him to one side and had blocked Shi Changxiao's way. Lei Wu Bei's treasure blade had turned into a pile of broken pieces of iron. Then, a crisp sound was heard as it fell to the ground. Only the hilt of the blade was left in Lei Wu Bei's hand. This godly weapon was hard to find in the world, but It had turned into a pile of scrap iron because of the strength of a few fingers. Lei Wu Bei's heart was grief-stricken. He was dumbfounded. This blade had already started to show some slight cracks during the fight with the Snake King. Lei Wu Bei knew about this, but he didn't care too much about it. He felt that he could easily repair the blade as long as he could survive this battle with the help of his Xian cultivation. Chapter 366. On the 31st. I don't know if I'll be able to write in the next few days. So, I've decided to put the 2 chapters on the 31st in the wee hours of the morning to give myself some pressure. In any case, I can't just play around on the last day of the month. I'll write as much as I can in addition to these 2 chapters. As for the first, I'll work overtime. The saber hadn't been completely destroyed by Venerable Mei's hands. In fact, Venerable Mei had joined forces with Lei Wu Bei's Xian art to destroy it in one fell swoop. This was because Venerable Mei's left hand had turned to the right when she had flicked those 3 fingers. But Lei Wu Bei had turned to the left against her strength. So, Venerable Mei's finger had been imbued with a supreme Xian strength, and she had flicked it 3 times at the right time. The strength of a venerable master and a great master had been applied to the saber at the same time. What kind of heavenly weapon could resist the joint pressure of these 2 forces? The answer was none. At least, Lei Wu Bei's saber couldn't. 3 forces had been applied to 1 point at the same time. Therefore, the saber had turned into scrap metal. Therefore, the cold-blooded great master saber had been destroyed by the joint forces of Venerable Mei and him. Venerable Mei clenched his left hand into a fist. A thin line of blood flowed down his fist. His hand was a Xian beast body, so it was exceptionally tough, but he was still made of flesh and blood. So, he had been holding the saber's edge the entire time. So, he had sustained some injuries. However, this injury was insignificant compared to the price that Shi Changshao and Lei Wu Bei had paid. It was too insignificant. That was because this blow had sealed the victory. Lei Wu Bei had been in a daze for only a moment. But Venerable Mei's body had quickly fallen to the ground. So, he had managed to avoid Li Ju Tian's all-out attack. Then, he had slid towards Lei Wu Bei like a slide. Then, he had ruthlessly kicked Lei Wu Bei's shins. Lei Wu Bei would have had to change his name to the Crippled Great Master if that kick had landed on him. He could definitely break both of his legs. Lei Wu Bei turned pale with fright. He lifted his right foot, and his body spun twice. Then he flashed 3 feet away. But he immediately regretted it, because behind him was Shi Changshao, whom he had just blocked. Venerable Mei had chased away Lei Wu Bei with his 2 kicks. But he had then welcomed Shi Changshao. His movements were similar to that of a black dragon twisting around a pillar. Then, his legs shrouded Shi Changshao like raindrops. Shi Changshao was startled by this sudden attack. His line of sight had been blocked by Lei Wu Bei a moment ago. He knew that the situation was urgent, but he didn't know that Venerable Mei was close at hand. Lei Wu Bei's dodge had exposed him to Venerable Mei's attack. He was in a fluster as he tried to parry the attacks. He was about to throw caution to the wind. However, he saw that Venerable Mei had stood up at some point in time. Then, her palm came crashing down like Mount Tai. He didn't have enough time to urge his martial power. Moreover, he couldn't retreat. Shi Changshao clenched his teeth. He closed his eyes and went forward to meet the attack. A burst of explosive sounds were heard. Then, 2 bangs were heard. Shi Changshao's shoulders were hit, and he was sent rolling like an embroidered ball. Venerable Mei retreated at lightning speed. He crossed the distance of 8 feet in a flash. Solitary Eagle's attack fell on empty air. Then, he arrived in front of Li Ju Tian. Then, he clashed with the red-eyed Li Ju Tian 3 more times. He blocked Li Ju Tian's possible escape routes. He clashed with his 3 palms. This was simply bullying. Venerable Mei hadn't suffered any injuries. Li Ju Tian, on the other hand, had sustained serious internal and external injuries. The consequences of these 3 palms could be imagined. Li Ju Tian's body was sent flying like an embroidered ball. Blood spurted out of his mouth like a fountain. Li Ju Tian's broken bones had been forcibly sealed by his Xian strength, but they had completely disintegrated. He looked like a human-shaped blood hedgehog. Thin arrows of blood were shooting out of his pores. Venerable Mei raised her long sleeves, and a black cloth wrapped around Li Ju Tian's severely injured body like a bolt of lightning. Then, she threw him up into the air. Her movements were perfect and coincided with the solitary falcon's third move of the 9 stances of the Phantom Falcon. This move was Solitary Eagle's most powerful killing move. It was also the move that Solitary Eagle had the most thorough understanding of. He was about to take advantage of this move, but he hadn't expected that Li Ju Tian would be thrown into his hands in grief and indignation. Li Ju Tian opened his mouth and spat out an arrow of blood towards his face. Solitary Eagle was shocked. He hastily withdrew his move and dodged the arrow of blood. Then, he caught Li Ju Tian's body with both hands. He moved 30 feet in the air like a bolt of lightning to avoid Venerable Mei's next move. Venerable Mei had thrown Li Ju Tian into the air. So, how could it not have a purpose? Therefore, Solitary Eagle understood that he had to dodge as quickly as possible. However, Solitary Eagle hadn't thought that his reaction would be so quick. But he was still a step too late. He felt a sharp pain in his lower abdomen. Venerable Mei had struck him with 3 palms. 2 of them had missed, but the third one had missed. Solitary Eagle let out a strange cry and flew away like a kite with its string cut. He fell to the ground, and his face flushed red. He tried to control himself, but failed. He spat out a mouthful of blood and spat it on Li Ju Tian. Moreover, the Solitary Falcon's Qigong had exceeded Master Mei's expectations. However, the Solitary Falcon's Xianqi had backfired when he had forcibly retracted his attack to catch Li Ju Tian. Moreover, his Xianqi protection had dropped to a very low level. Moreover, the Solitary Falcon's Xianqi hadn't been profound to begin with. Therefore, the Solitary Falcon's Xianqi had been severely injured even though he had only been grazed. Venerable Mei had fought a good battle. So, how could he let go of such a good opportunity? His body flashed and disappeared. He was already in front of Lei Wu Bei when he reappeared. Then, he launched a barrage of attacks. Solitary Eagle was flying at an angle at this moment. Li Ju Tian's injuries had worsened. Shi Changxiao was 15 feet away. So, it would be tantamount to fighting the cold-blooded great master Lei Wu Bei alone for the next few breaths. Lei Wu Bei had just been injured, and his treasured saber had just been destroyed. So his fighting spirit was at its most dispirited. He couldn't help but be frightened when he saw that Venerable Mei wanted to fight him alone. So he desperately tried to resist and quickly retreated. Bang, 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 bang. The ground was suddenly covered in dust. It was so dark that one couldn't even see his own fingers. Shi Changxiao had just arrived and wanted to help, but he could only see 2 blurred figures in the thick fog. Moreover, these 2 people were wearing black clothes. So, it was impossible to tell which one was Venerable Mei and which one was Lei Wu Bei. He hesitated for less than half a second. Then, the sound of a beating was heard. Then, Lei Wu Bei let out a muffled groan of pain. Then, a person's shadow spun and fell down. It was Lei Wu Bei. Blood was gushing out of Lei Wu Bei's mouth. His right arm was strangely bent at a right angle. It was obvious that the fracture of his right arm was quite serious. Venerable Mei had been merciful and hadn't killed him. Lei Wu Bei's arm would have been turned into dust if she hadn't been merciful. Who knew where it would have flown away to? The outcome of the battle was clear at a glance. The 4 great masters had been defeated by the Lord of Tian Fa. It could be said that Venerable Mei's victory had been exceptionally clean. In fact, the 4 great masters hadn't even had time to use their ultimate moves. But the outcome had been clear. In fact, any one of these 4 people would have been able to change the outcome of the battle if they had used their ultimate move. They wouldn't have been able to defeat Venerable Mei, but it would have been a lot better than the current outcome. That was because Venerable Mei's World Cage could only be used against one person at a time, and it would have been even more difficult to use it against a great master. Therefore, The moment he used the heaven and earth cage, although the enemy he was facing couldn't move, it was the most dangerous moment for him. Therefore, Venerable May couldn't use the world cage. In fact, he didn't dare to. But people cherish their lives. Moreover, this battle was only a battle of victory and defeat. It wasn't a battle of life and death. And the price of losing wasn't very high either. The only one who would have had to pay a painful price was the Shuehun Manor. And it didn't have much to do with the other great masters. Li Ju Tian wasn't willing to sacrifice himself to the enemy. So, how could the other three great masters do the same? Therefore, this kind of result was not too surprising. Venerable May waved her long sleeves. Then, she rolled up like a cloud. A gust of wind rose up, and the dust in the field disappeared without a trace. Venerable May's tall figure was revealed. She was wearing a large black robe. She stood in the middle of the field. Her black robe fluttered in the wind. She was looking at the field with disdain. Suddenly, a person in the crowd took a deep breath and cried out in shock, "Look! Look at that field!" Everyone hastily looked, and they couldn't help but take a deep breath. The entire field was made of the strongest granite, and a layer of it had been shoveled off within a radius of 10 feet. In fact, it was 3 feet high. It wouldn't be difficult to shovel off such a layer. In fact, any great master would have been able to do it. But the problem was that they hadn't seen any rocks fluttering in the air. So, how did this layer of rocks disappear? Did they grow wings and fly away? They didn't know that the 5 great masters weren't fighting for their lives, but they were using their strongest skills, and their supreme Xian techniques were surging in all directions. So, they were scraping off layer by layer, and more rocks were being scraped off as the fight became more and more intense. Furthermore, all of them had silently turned into mist and disappeared, and this was the result of Venerable May trying her best to control it. Otherwise, this small mountain would have been flattened if the Xian power of the 5 great masters had been allowed to develop at full strength. Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng sighed at the same time. They had foreseen this outcome, but they hadn't expected it to happen so quickly. Even Solitary Eagle, Lei Wu Bei, and Shi Changshao hadn't expected this. Shi Changshao and Lei Wu Bei stood in a daze. Their expressions changed. Solitary Eagle placed Li Ju Tian on the ground. He then turned around and walked a few steps. He wanted to say something, but he didn't say anything in the end. His face had suddenly turned red. The 4 great masters had besieged them, but they had suffered such a crushing defeat. How could these 4 great masters, who boasted that they were at the peak of the world, accept such a result? Today's battle hadn't only represented the complete defeat of the allied forces of the continent. Moreover, the prestige of the 4 great masters had also suffered a huge blow. Chapter 367. How many people will know who Venerable May is once today's matter gets out? Not many people in the entire continent know this name, but the 4 great masters are well known in the world. Won't they be ridiculed wherever they go in the future? Look, this is the guy with an undeserved reputation. He's usually arrogant and looks down on people. But the 4 of them were defeated by a nobody. The 3 great masters almost wanted to dig a hole in the ground and hide in it. We can't afford to lose this face. We admit defeat in today's battle. Venerable Mei Xian's skills are unrivaled. We are convinced. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, Lei Baoyu took a deep breath and broke the awkward silence. Admit defeat? No problem. But don't forget my 3 conditions. From today onwards, Tianfa Forest is a forbidden area for you people. Venerable Mei stretched out his hand and pointed at the people from all the influential families in the continent. He snorted and said, "If one of them comes in, I'll exterminate his entire family. Then, I'll bring 10,000 people with me. I want to see if anyone has the guts to do so." Since we've lost, the 3 conditions that Venerable Mei had mentioned must be fulfilled. Lei Baoyu's smile gave the crowd a feeling that this Zijin protector of the elusive world of immortals did not care about the outcome of this battle. He continued, "But There's one more thing that I must inform Venerable May since the outcome of this battle has been decided. What is it? Venerable May Langlang asked. 3 years later, on the night of the full moon in the 7th month, the battle will be held in the 3 Holy Lands. Our palace master is looking forward to the Tian Fa Saint King's presence. Lei Baoyu laughed and said, for the past 500 years, the Tian Fa forest has always been ranked last, and the Holy King has also been in closed-door training for 500 years. I think it's about time for him to come out. I hope Venerable May can tell me about this. In addition, our palace lord asked me to bring a message to Venerable May. If the Tian Fa Saint King does not appear this time, and the Tian Fa forest is defeated again, then from now on, the name Tian Fa forest will be removed. From now on, there will only be 3 Holy Lands. There will be no more Tian Fa forest. Venerable May shuddered. He gritted his teeth and said, is this the real reason why you're here today? What judge? It's all an excuse. Is that hypocrite of your palace master finally running out of patience? Don't forget that the war for seizing the heavens is coming. At that time, without the Tian Fa forest, will your palace lord be able to bear the responsibility? This matter will be decided by the palace lord. Bu Kuangfeng narrowed his eyes. 2 rays of Langlang's cold light shot out from his eyes. Venerable May, do you think that with the current strength of Tian Fa, you will be able to play a role in the war for seizing the heavens without a Saint King? No matter how useless we are still better than the 2 of you trash. Venerable May was so angry that his emotions were somewhat unstable. He didn't want to talk nonsense with them anymore. He waved his hand and said, let's collect some interest first. A clear cry of a crane was heard in midair. A black shadow descended at a speed faster than the speed of sound, and rushed into the midst of the Shui Hun Manor's troops like lightning. Judging from his position, he must have been hiding in the sky for a long time. Jun Moxie suddenly realized why he hadn't seen Long Crane since the start of the war. So that's how it is. Li Tengyin was squatting in front of his father with tears and snot streaming down his face. He was panic-stricken and didn't know what to do. He had always relied on his father's prestige to run amok. So, it seemed as if the sky had collapsed when he saw that his father had sustained such serious injuries. He didn't know what to do for a moment. Li Ju Tian was seriously injured and couldn't move. But his life wasn't in danger. His breathing was weak, and he closed his eyes to rest. He had already lost face. So, preserving his life and restoring his strength as soon as possible had become his top priority. However, a powerful wind-breaking sound was suddenly heard, and a black shadow came down with a schwa sound. The remaining experts of the Shui Hun Manor cried out in alarm and attacked at the same time. However, that shadow didn't try to dodge and took everyone's attack head-on. Then, it grabbed Li Tengyin with its huge claws and soared into the sky without stopping. It flew dozens of feet in an instant, and a few iron-like feathers fluttered down from the sky. Li Ju Tian's eyes widened in anger. He suddenly sat up despite his serious injuries and shouted, and everyone cried out in alarm, Crane King. It was the 3rd king of the Tian Fa forest, the Crane King, Long Crane. He had revealed his true form at this time. He was holding Li Tengyin with his sharp claws and was floating in the air. Li Tengyin had been given a good name ever since he was born, but he had never been able to soar in the clouds. However, he had truly soared in the clouds today. However, he had always lived a life of luxury. He had always done things his own way and had always been domineering and domineering. So, when had he ever experienced such a thrilling experience? He had indeed soared in the clouds, but he was so scared that his lower body became anxious. He could only cry out, Father, save me. Then, he couldn't control himself. His front part spurted out, and his back also spurted out. The entire sky was filled with a stench in an instant. The people below covered their noses and dodged. Li Ju Tian's heart turned cold. He suddenly remembered the bet he had with the Tian Fa forest. He couldn't care less about his serious injuries. He couldn't care less about his face either. So he turned to Lei Baoyu and shouted, "Brother Lei, for the sake of this Li's feelings, and for the sake of this Li's tireless efforts for the immortal palace, I ask Brother Lei to save my son." He was the second great master of the Tian Fa forest. So, saying these words was no different from kneeling down and begging for mercy. Lei Baoyu hesitated for a moment. He looked at the venerable Mei, but didn't open his mouth to speak. He had thought that the matter was over, and he had already offended the venerable Mei with his words. So, how could he put down his face and plead for leniency? His nose would be smeared in the face if he were to open his mouth. So, how could Lei Baoyu afford to lose face in front of the world's heroes? Moreover, he represented the supreme hermitage, and that was even more unacceptable. Li Ju Tian's eyes slowly turned into despair. It seemed as if he had aged a few decades. The once illustrious second great master of the Tian Fa forest hadn't been so disheartened even when he had suffered a heavy blow from the venerable Mei. In fact, he had only shown grief and indignation. But his only son's life was in the hands of others, and he was powerless to do anything about it. Lei Baoyu, you went back on your word. You promised that you'd protect my son. Li Ju Tian let out a soft groan. Then he suddenly opened his eyes and spoke in a fierce tone. "I swear to the heavens that I'll slaughter everyone here if my son meets with misfortune today. I'll exterminate his entire family." A long and loud cry was heard in the sky. Long Crane laughed and said, "My 3-month wish has finally been fulfilled today." Suddenly, he waved his right wing, and Li Tongyun screamed. His blood swirled in the air. Li Tongyun's legs were severed from his thighs and fell to the ground. "Yin'er!" Li Ju Tian's blood flowed out of his liver as he screamed. It was unknown where he got the strength from, but he suddenly turned over and stood up. "My Yin'er!" Li Ju Tian's old tears streamed down his face. But who could be blamed for this? Li Tongyun wouldn't have been able to act so tyrannically and domineeringly if Li Ju Tian hadn't been so arrogant and willful. He had even tried to snatch someone else's wife. How could a young master of an aristocratic family do that? Moreover, Li Ju Tian was aware of his son's unbearable behavior, but he hadn't tried to stop it. Instead, he had blindly aided the tyrant and had vowed to fulfill his son's wishes. In the end, Li Ju Tian had to bear the greatest responsibility for Li Tongyun's miserable fate. Is the second great master that amazing? Is there really no one in this world who dares to provoke him? Li Tongyun's blood-soaked thighs had revealed Li Ju Tian's biggest mistake to the world. Suddenly, at this moment, a strange change occurred. A golden light flashed, and 2 exquisite throwing knives suddenly appeared in front of Li Ju Tian. One was aimed at his throat, and the other was aimed at his heart. There were many experts present at the scene, but no one was able to find out where those 2 flying knives had come from. Moreover, no one was able to find out the identity of the person who had thrown those knives. However, everyone understood the intention of the person who had thrown those knives. Li Ju Tian must die. The throwing knives arrived in front of Li Ju Tian's eyes in the blink of an eye. Li Ju Tian roared in anger as he raised his hand to block. One of the throwing knives was deflected, and the other pierced deep into the muscles of his arm. He was a famous great master of his generation. He had copper skin and iron bones, and was invincible. No one in the world could stop him. However, the remaining strength in his body wasn't enough to evade a small throwing knife. "Ooh!" Li Ju Tian faced upwards and roared. "Who wants to kill me? Come out if you have the guts." This was the question that everyone present wanted to ask. Who wants to kill Li Ju Tian, who released those throwing knives? It was undeniable that there were many people present who wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to kill Li Ju Tian. Li Ju Tian had shouted, "I, Li Ju Tian, swear to the heavens that I will slaughter everyone here if my son suffers any misfortune today. I will exterminate his entire family." These words were a threat to everyone present. Perhaps everyone had the intention to kill Li Ju Tian, but no one dared to take action in front of so many people. Moreover, no one dared to kill Li Ju Tian in front of so many people. After all, the remaining strength of the Shui Hun Manor was very weak. However, it was still much stronger than an ordinary force. Not many people would dare to rashly poke the hornet's nest, so they could only do it secretly if they wanted to. However, the person who had brazenly released those throwing knives was obviously impatient. Or perhaps he didn't put the heroes of the world in his eyes. Along with a deep and heavy pressure that was as shocking as a mountain, everyone's heart trembled. Chapter 368. I'm at Jinan Airport, just got off the plane. I'll upload these 2 chapters first, lest the brothers get anxious. Li Ju Tian, I want to kill you. The black-robed man stood in the air as he spoke up in a heavy tone. Then he stretched out a leg, and from a height of several hundred zhang, as though he was walking down a flight of stairs, he walked down step by step with his hands behind his back and his head slightly raised. Everyone was shocked, walking in the air as if walking on flat ground. Even the Beast King of Tian Fa, the Flying Beast King, Long Crane, doesn't have such a miraculous ability. This person's Xian Qi had obviously reached an indescribably profound level. Li Ju Tian's eyes darkened, and he fell to the ground with a thump. He had jumped up like the last radiance of a setting sun. Now that he had seen such a shocking and unparalleled technique, he knew that even if he had a complete victory, he would still be no match for his opponent. This person in front of him was even more terrifying than Tian Fa's Venerable Mei. Much more terrifying. Li Ju Tian had lost his will to fight. He lowered his head and asked in a low voice, Why? Why? Are you asking for a reason? Didn't you always say that those with bigger fists are right? The mysterious black-robed man snorted coldly and said, There are some people you can't afford to offend. I can't afford to offend you. If you anger him, you will have to pay the corresponding price. Understand? Understood. Li Ju Tian raised his desolate head and spoke in a low voice, I don't expect to live, but I want to know who I've offended. Who did you offend? The mysterious black-robed man laughed coldly and said, Do you know why Tian Fa's Xian beasts would ruin your plans? Why didn't they attack the person you wanted to harm? Don't you find it strange that so many unreasonable things have happened recently? It's you. So it was you who stopped the Xian beast tide from attacking Jun Wui. A light flashed in Li Ju Tian's mind, and he immediately guessed it. But he didn't dare to believe it. So he was tongue-tied as he asked, The Jun family? You did this for the Jun family. As soon as these words came out, everyone present burst into an uproar. Even the Jun family's Jun Wui was among them. His mouth was also wide open. Since when did our Jun family have such a powerful backer? How come I didn't know about it? However, the other people were looking at Jun Wui with only one kind of expression in their eyes. I'm so jealous. It turns out that the Jun family, which has always kept a low profile, actually has such an earth-shattering character hidden behind them. I can't provoke from the Jun. I can't. The Jun family. The puny Li Ju Tian can't afford to provoke them. I have. I have. I have. I have. I. 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 The mysterious black-robed man's sharp eyes slanted as he finished speaking. He then looked at the people from the Silver Blizzard City. Xiao Bu Yu and the others suddenly felt a chill run down their spines. The black-robed man laughed coldly and said, As for the rest of you, there's no need to panic. As long as you don't make me unhappy, I don't have much interest in finding trouble with you. Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. Ha ha! The black-clothed masked man laughed sinisterly as he looked at Xiao Bu Yu and the others. There was a clear warning in his eyes. Xiao Bu Yu forced a smile and said, Your Excellency clearly distinguishes between gratitude and grudges. This Xiao admires you. The black-robed man snorted and said, Clearly distinguishing between gratitude and grudges? Not necessarily. Watch me play a little trick. Li Ju Tian stood motionless in the void. However, a mass of pitch-black flames emerged from his body and wrapped around Li Ju Tian's body. The black-robed man chuckled and spoke in a nonchalant manner. Li Ju Tian, you're a failure as a great master. But you're undoubtedly a success as a great master. Everyone could vaguely hear the formerly glorious second paragon let out a short, terrified shriek. Then the black-robed man waved his hand and picked up something. Then a golden light flashed, and 2 throwing knives fell into his hands. Venerable May suddenly shouted, "Wait!" She could see that the black-robed man was holding the panther King Xiandan. However, she suddenly realized something after she had shouted. The Xiandan was inside Li Ju Tian's body. So, why was it suddenly taken out? And why is it in the hands of this black-robed man? Could it be? The black-robed man snorted and ignored her. Then he looked around with a sharp gaze. It seemed as if he was giving a warning. It seemed as if he was bidding farewell. Then he turned around and took a step forward. His entire body suddenly disappeared as he took that step. He disappeared just like that. It seemed as if there was an invisible door in front of him. He took a step forward, and the door disappeared again. Then no one in the world could see him anymore. But how is this possible? The tens of thousands of people were left speechless. In fact, even the drop of a needle could be heard. Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Then someone suddenly shouted after a long time, "Li Ju Tian!" Everyone was startled. They gathered around and saw that there was nothing left of Li Ju Tian's original position. There was only a small pile of ash left behind. The great master Li Ju Tian had turned into a pile of ashes in the blink of an eye due to the burning of that strange black flame. What kind of skill is this? Even Venerable May was so shocked that her eyes were wide open. She hadn't even noticed that the Snake King had arrived in front of her. "Big brother." The Snake King looked at her bashfully and said, "That man, but was very big." Venerable May was startled. She asked what? Is very big. The Venerable May didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she shook her head. Then she jokingly said, "Snake King, that's a man. Why are you so concerned about his butt?" The Snake King's face turned red. He snorted and turned away. The Venerable May smiled and no longer thought about this matter. But she was very puzzled. What is the origin of this mysterious black-robed man? I don't have any impression of such a strong person in my memory. But how can this person be a nobody if he possesses such a world-shaking power? She racked her brains, but couldn't figure it out. So she couldn't help but feel at a loss. However, she couldn't imagine that this mysterious man who had suddenly appeared and intimidated everyone was the same June Moxie who had been spanked by her a moment ago. And the reason why the Qian Sun Serpent Queen could see that this man's but was different from an ordinary person's was because Venerable May had spanked it himself. So, how could it not be abnormal? The power of the world cage that had surrounded June Moxie disappeared after the Venerable May had gone into battle. So, June Moxie had finally regained his ability to move. So, he took advantage of the fact that everyone was paying attention to the fight between the 4 great masters and the Venerable May. So, he couldn't wait to move. Then he quietly slipped into the Hong Jun Pagoda. The first thing he did was to rub his buttocks anxiously. It was very painful, especially in such an indecent place. However, he saw that Li Ju Tian and the others had been defeated. June Moxie hadn't expected that things would happen so quickly. He had activated the art of unlocking the heaven's fortune. But the swelling on his buttocks couldn't be removed in such a short time. So he had no choice but to drag his cumbersome buttocks and flee. He had gotten rid of Li Ju Tian in a few words. Then he had fled in a panic. However, the Snake King had also noticed the abnormality of his buttocks because of her sharp eyes. June Mo Xie had not expected that his domineering appearance this time would leave such an unforgettable impression in the hearts of these experts. Most of the people present here were the great masters and Shun Xian. Tian Xian's Earth Xian cultivation was a minority. Most of the people present here were at the Gold Xian level, Yu Xian's level, except for the great masters and Shun Xian. Such a level could be considered as an expert in the secular world. But they have been reduced to ants today. They were truly ants. Each and every one of these experts was a legend. And each and every one of them was a character that they had to look up to. They had felt that they were unreachable when they had first arrived in the Southern Heaven City. And they had felt that this trip had been worthwhile. However, the four great masters had been defeated by someone else, even though they had joined hands. Moreover, two of the great masters had appeared at the same time. They were world-shaking swordsmen, the great masters of the storm and the storm. What a resounding name. But it turned out that he had gone to the elusive world of immortals to be a protector. The name Hermitage had suddenly appeared in front of everyone. But this was the first time that most of them had heard of this name. No one had ever heard of such a legend before. And this had made everyone even more puzzled. This mystery had made everyone feel as if they were in a fog. They didn't understand, but they knew that this hermitage was the pinnacle of strength in this world. This could be seen from Li Ju Tian's attitude. Moreover, the two great masters were Hermitage's protectors. So what did this mean? Of course, the venerable Mei had defeated the four great masters. So, everyone thought that he was the embodiment of the world's strongest expert. However, they hadn't expected that a mysterious black-robed man would appear at such a critical juncture. This man seemed even more powerful than the venerable Mei. Moreover, he had killed the great master Li Ju Tian with a snap of his fingers. These events had happened in succession in a very short period of time, and they had repeatedly attacked everyone's psychological endurance. In fact, it was almost too much for their eyes to take in. There's always a higher mountain. The same thought emerged in everyone's mind at the same time. It didn't matter if they were the people who had wandered the world, lived in seclusion in the mountains, or belonged to the aristocratic families. However, they were shocked at this moment. Moreover, they had been complacent and proud of their status. They were ashamed of themselves. What do I count as in front of these people? It seems that I'm not even a joke. I'm a frog at the bottom of a well. Another thing was that most of the people present at the scene, Li Ju Tian and Li Tongyun of the Shuihan Manor, had plotted against Jun Wui. But most of them had secretly participated in it, so they had turned a blind eye to it. However, the Jun family situation had turned around. Not only had no one died, but this mysterious man was obviously the Jun family's backer. What does this mean? Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng didn't dare to provoke this man. Even the venerable Mei had misgivings about this man. But this man was the backer of the Jun family that everyone had plotted against. Everyone panicked as this thought emerged in their minds. What if the Jun family retaliates? Suddenly, everyone had the same thought in their minds. We must be on good terms with the Jun family. We must report this matter to the family once we return. We must come up with a plan as soon as possible. Then, we will rush to the Tianxiang city and strive to gain the Jun family's favor. Don't retaliate against us. We can't afford to provoke you with your strength. Of course, there were still some thick-skinned people who had begun to make friends with Jun Wui. The third master Jun pondered for a moment. Then, a large group of people swarmed around him like a group of flies. All kinds of flattering words came one after another, and all kinds of praises and flattery poured into Jun Wui's ears in an endless torrent. The straightforward Jun Wui felt a headache coming on as he listened to them, but he had no choice but to deal with them carefully. It had to be said that such a shocking news would cause a huge shock if it were to spread out. The Jun family's status and safety could be said to be unshakable at this time. No one was willing to risk the wrath of such a powerful expert to deal with the Jun family. It didn't matter who it was. However, the Xiao family from the Silver Blizzard City were the most panic-stricken. Xiao Buiyu's face sank. He had suddenly felt an enormous pressure. Will the Silver Blizzard City be able to withstand the revenge of that mysterious man with its strength? I can't say for sure. That man had said that every debt has its debtor. But how could Xiao Buiyu not understand the meaning of that warning and the flavor of hatred from his decades of experience? The current situation was that the mysterious man wanted Jun Wui to seek justice on his own. Everyone could understand this layer of meaning. But the problem is, what will the Xiao family do if Jun Wui comes to seek revenge? Every debt has its debtor. The saying, every debt has its debtor, would be effective if Junwoo were to get rid of him by accident. Then, it would be the turn of that mysterious man. But do you think that you'll have to treat Junwoo like a baby in the palm of your hand? Do you think that he'll melt in your mouth? Do you think that he'll melt? What the foo asterisk K is this? Xiaohan looked at the encircled Junwoo, and he suddenly felt suffocated in his heart. In fact, it felt as if he was about to die. This mortal enemy, this person that he hated, this person that he dreamed of killing, this enemy that was like a toy in his heart, had now reached such a glorious moment. Even if he wanted to deal with him, his family would definitely reconsider. Even without the strict order from the city lord, his family would probably not offend the mysterious black-robed man for him. Then what should he do? Yaoer, that's mine. Mine. Xiaohan's eyes were filled with madness. Suddenly, his body swayed, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He stubbornly stood there, his eyes fixed on Junwoo. His gaze became colder and colder, crazier and crazier. Junwoo, I don't care what backing you have. I'm going to kill you. I will kill you. Long Crane let go of Li Tungyun's crippled body, and he cried out in alarm as he fell from a height of more than 100 meters. However, Li Tungyun had fallen from a height of over 100 meters. The people below scattered in all directions with a loud bang and created a large open space. At least 1,000 people would have rushed forward to catch Li Tungyun if he had fallen earlier. But Li Tungyun had become a hot potato now. Who would dare to catch him? Who would be willing to catch him? Bang! Li Tungyun's body fell heavily on the stone ground, and a large amount of blood splashed out. His entire body had turned into a pile of meat paste. One of his arms had been smashed, and his bones had been sent flying. Even his fingers were still attached. This miserable scene caused everyone's heart to pound wildly. Venerable May waved his sleeves, turned around, and shouted, "Everyone, remember today's conditions. I'll take my leave now, and we'll meet again someday." He didn't mention any names, and he didn't say it to anyone. But Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng knew that these words were meant for the two of them. He spoke in a solemn manner. "Venerable May, don't worry. A man's words carry enormous weight. He must accept the consequences of his defeat since he has lost. He won't go back on his words." Venerable May sneered and said, "Who would dare to go back on his words?" His threat was evident in his words. Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng looked at each other and forced a smile. Venerable May turned his gaze back and found that Jun Moxie's shadow had disappeared from the place where he had been standing. It seemed that this guy had slipped away like a mouse once he had eliminated the power of the world cage. She thought for a moment, and then suddenly turned around and walked towards Junwoo. The people who were surrounding Junwoo saw her fluttering black robe and avoided her as if they had seen a ghost. Junwoo finally heaved a sigh of relief. He felt that his body was sweating. He hadn't changed his expression in the face of a mountain of swords, a forest of swords, a mountain of corpses, and a sea of blood. But he felt that he couldn't breathe in the face of a tide of flattery. He felt that dealing with these people who had looked down on him in such a short period of time was more tiring than fighting a battle. Seeing that Venerable May had come over, Junwoo smiled and cupped his hands. "Venerable May, what brings you here today? Your nephew's bones are clear, and he is very talented." Venerable May did not beat around the bush and directly said, "I wish to take him as my disciple. What do you think, General Jun?" Although Junwoo was prepared and had guessed her intention, he couldn't help but be surprised when he heard this. Then he became happy, but he remembered Jun Moxie's strange temper, so he smiled and said, "It's the kid's fortune that the Venerable May has taken a liking to him. I naturally have no objections. However, the Jun family has always been open-minded, and Moxie has always been rather self-disciplined. Moreover, he has his own opinions. If Venerable May really wants this, as long as Moxie agrees, the Jun family will definitely not have a problem. Rather self-disciplined." Venerable May seemed to be stunned for a moment, as if he didn't understand this sentence. There was an obvious sense of disbelief in his tone. Then he seemed to grit his teeth and laughed. Not bad, not bad, very good. Rather self-disciplined. That's good. He wanted to curse in his heart. That despicable and shameless kid's actions could actually be called rather self-disciplined? Where did this come from? If that's the case, I have my own ways. Venerable May was a little disdainful in his heart. This great general actually dared to lie through her teeth. To think that you would praise your nephew so much. But I wonder where your nephew is? Venerable May was very solemn. It was only because she was about to scold the legendary, honest, and decisive blood general in front of her that she forcefully suppressed her temper, or else she would have scolded him. Sia? Junwui only remembered after the words left his mouth. Wasn't Sia by your side just now? Your nephew wasn't there when I returned. Venerable May's face didn't even blush as he replied, I had a pleasant chat with your nephew. Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng had already arranged for everyone to evacuate while the two of them were talking. Everyone kept quiet out of fear when they saw that the great evil star Venerable May and Junwui were having a pleasant chat. They admired the Jun family even more. They didn't dare to disturb them, so they quietly left one after another. The mountaintop had already been emptied by this time. The Xian beasts in the Tian Fa forest had also retreated a long time ago. Only a few beast kings were left to look at Venerable May with concern. The sound gradually faded away, and the mountainous area between the mountain and forest regained its tranquility. Lei Baoyu chuckled, cupped his fists, and said, Venerable May, beast kings, we will meet again in the future. We two brothers will take our leave now. We will return to the palace to report on our mission. Venerable May nodded slightly. He was about to speak when a majestic figure suddenly rushed out from behind him and shouted, Hermitage Protector Zijin, you're amazing. It won't be too late to leave after you eat my fist. At the same time, the sound of wind rustling in the sky turned into a thunderstorm and fell down. A sharp voice with a sonorous, murderous aura shouted, I would also like to experience the power of the elusive world of a mortal's guardian Zijin. Bear King, Bear Mountain, and Crane King, Crane soars to the heavens. Everyone on the scene knew that the two kings didn't want to detain or kill Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng. They only wanted to stir up a dispute. How much worse would their Xian cultivation be compared to the legendary Zijin protectors of the elusive land of immortals? In other words, how would the strength of the subordinates of the Tian Fa forest compare to that of the Hermitage Protector? Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng had the same thought after they heard Lei Baoyu's inexplicable words. So, how could they let go of this opportunity when they saw that Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng were about to leave? A gentle and graceful silhouette appeared with a whistling sound. It was the Qian Sun Serpent Queen. Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng looked at each other and smiled. They didn't make any moves. The purple gold-treasured sword on their waist didn't seem to have moved. But two dazzling rays of light flashed. Suddenly, the sky was filled with specks of starlight. It seemed as if a rainstorm had suddenly started. Then, a strange whoosh sound was heard. It seemed as if a gale had suddenly started to blow. Sand and stones were flying everywhere. The attacks of the three beast kings were sharp, but they found it difficult to move in this rainstorm and gale. The two world-shaking swordsmen, the rainstorm and fierce wind duo, Lei Baoyu and Bu Guangfeng, were worthy of being called the great masters of the previous generation. Their Xian skills were extremely profound, and their coordination was flawless. Moreover, their power had increased by several times. Long Crane rushed to the sky with a clear sound. He then burst into laughter and praised, You're worthy of the rainstorm and fierce wind duo. I admire you. A whistling sound was heard from Bu Guangfeng's mouth. He then said, The Tian Fa forest has a well-deserved reputation. We'll meet again after 5 years. Farewell. His voice had already traveled a mile away when he had said the word farewell. The five had only exchanged one move. Then, they had already retreated. It seemed that the five of them were fighting 2 against 3. So, it seemed that they were evenly matched. However, the three beast kings were well aware that the initiative was in the hands of the other party. Hermitage is very powerful. The three of them were somewhat surprised. But Venerable May had already anticipated the outcome of this battle. So, he didn't care about it. He frowned and paced back and forth. He was thinking in his heart, where did that little bastard Jun Moxie escape to? Why can't I find him with my spirit sense? What's the reason? Chapter 369. Jun Wui, Dongfeng Wenqing, Sikong and Yi, and the others had also come to bid their farewells. Venerable May nodded absent-mindedly. In her eyes, an ordinary Shun Xian and Tian Xian expert was only a San or a Si. That's all. Venerable May didn't want to blow up this matter if it wasn't for the fact that Jun Wui, the three Dongfeng brothers, and Jun Daxiao were involved in this matter. And the Venerable May didn't want to make a big deal out of it. She would have been embarrassed if that had happened. So, she wouldn't have even nodded in agreement. So, how could she pay attention to what they were talking about? Her heart was still unsettled. She waited for a long time and then raised her head. Her eyes were filled with the starry river and the bright moon in the sky. It's already nighttime. I didn't even realize that such a long time has passed. What was I thinking about that made me so absent-minded? This has never happened before. Why is this happening? She turned her head again and noticed that there were only 3 people left by her side. All the Xian beasts had quietly retreated under the leadership of the Tiger King and the Lion King. However, she could faintly see dust rising from the depths of the forest. It was the dust that had been stirred up during their retreat. I've been too absent-minded. The retreat of such a large number of Xian beasts would have been accompanied by loud noises even if it had been quiet and orderly. But I hadn't even noticed it. I've never been in such a state of absent-mindedness in the last 100 years. The Venerable May didn't pay much attention to the allied human forces. They had also retreated by now. Even the corpses on the ground had been taken away. The only exception was Li Ju-tian and his son. One had turned into white ash, and the other had turned into mincemeat. The allied forces had simply buried them and piled them up into a small mound. That small mound was illuminated by the setting sun. Only a piece of white wood that had been cut from a tree was conspicuous. There were some words scribbled on it. The tomb of Li Ju-tian and his son. There were no other words apart from that. A supreme being of a generation. How glorious was he in the past? How arrogant was his way of doing things? In the end, he actually ended up in such a miserable state. It wasn't until he saw the wooden plaque that Venerable May finally came to his senses. He looked at it for a moment, then smiled bitterly and murmured, "So, the second paragon is just like any other beggar who's been frozen or starved to death. He's a nobody." Sighing, he looked around. Only the 4 of them were left in the vast forest. After more than a month of fighting and killing, the gratitude and grudges had finally come to an end. The heroes of the world who had gathered here finally dispersed and went their separate ways. Everything returned to normal, but some people were missing. The faint smell of blood still lingered in the air, adding a sense of desolation to this large, open space. You just fought with Lei Baoyu and Bu Kuangfeng. How do you feel? You've already fought against the 4 great supremes who are here today. How does their strength compare to that of the 8 great supremes? I want to know how you feel about our Tian Fa forest and the hermitage. Venerable May folded his hands behind his back and looked into the distance as he asked in a leisurely manner. He had asked 3 questions in a row. It seemed like a very ordinary question, but the 3 Xian Beast Kings felt an enormous pressure. Those 2 men are very powerful, very powerful. Long Crane carefully recalled the situation of the battle. Then, he flattened his long mouth and said, "The strength of any one of them surpasses that of the 4 great supremes who are here today. In fact, they are much stronger than the strongest of the 4 great supremes. Li Ju-tian. The 2 of them have joined hands, and their swords have combined in harmony. So, their might has multiplied. The 3 of us can't defeat them. Even if we were to fight with our bodies, we'd still lose. Moreover, this is an assessment based on the strength they've shown so far. I agree with Third Brother's opinion. Moreover, the Hermitage has revealed the tip of the iceberg in terms of Lei Baoyu and Bu Kuangfeng's strength. I'm afraid that their overall strength is slightly higher than our Tian Fa, Qiansun's serpent queen gently stroked her long hair. Her beautiful face had a dignified look on it. Slightly higher than us? That's too conservative. I don't dare to have such an extravagant hope. I think that they're not just higher than us. In fact, they're far higher than us. Venerable May slowly turned around and spoke up in a bleak tone. Your progress is too slow. I'm very disappointed. Long Crane and the other two Xian Beast Kings lowered their heads with red faces. One of the three Holy Lands is an extremely dangerous place. Tian Fa Forest has declined too much in recent years. Perhaps it will be stripped of the title of an extremely dangerous place in the near future. That kind of humiliation. Hee, Big Bear Long Crane. Venerable May sneered and said, You two have already guaranteed the loss of the Tian Fa's sacred fruit. So, you know what to do if there's no news of this matter after 3 years. Venerable May's tone had become extremely stern. Long Crane and Bear Mountain stood up straight. Their faces were solemn as they said, Don't worry, big brother. We two brothers will take responsibility if something goes wrong. Venerable May snorted and said in a low voice, Do you two think that your heads are worth a lot of money? Everyone was left speechless. How could the heads of the two Xian Beast Kings be worthless? But what would be the point of chopping off their heads if the situation were to change? In fact, they would only be wasting their strength for no reason. So, they didn't know what to say about these two. Venerable May raised his head and pondered in silence. The Tian Fa is unsought, and the Xian Beast Kings return to their roots. Tian Fa's 10,000 years depends on one person's success or failure. What profound meaning is contained in these 4 sentences? The Tian Fa's Xian Beast tide had already passed, but the Tian Fa's side was still shrouded in fog, except for the phrase, the Tian Fa is unsought. Venerable May had thought that the Xian Beast Kings would suffer great losses this time, and he had thought that the Xian Beast Kings would return to their roots. But it seemed that this wasn't the case. The Tian Fa's 10,000 years depends on one person's success or failure. It was even more shrouded in fog. I can't understand it. What does it mean? Boss, that brat, since you want to take him as your disciple, why don't you? Snake King asked. I naturally have other ways. Venerable May looked into the distance and said slowly, How can I let him escape from my palms so easily? If I don't teach him how to be a good person, wouldn't it be too easy for him? The last few words were extremely cold and gloomy. In fact, it sounded like he was gnashing his teeth in hatred. The 3 Xian Beast Kings had known him for many years. So, how could they understand their boss's character? They couldn't help but shiver at the same time. They looked at each other in dismay. Does boss want to take a disciple or take revenge? Why does he have such a gloomy and vengeful tone? I'm already on the verge of breaking through. Today's battle has given me an epiphany. If I want to break through the final barrier in one fell swoop, blindly practicing is not the best strategy. I must travel the world. That's the best choice. Venerable May smiled and said, Bear King and Crane King, the two of you guard the Tian Fa forest well. Don't go out for a while. Chin Sun and I will go out and have a look in the next 2 years. She sighed after she finished speaking. Venerable May's limpid eyes were filled with confusion and contradiction if one could see through the black cloth that covered her face. Venerable May's eyes were as limpid as the autumn waters. Bear Mountain and Long Crane bowed in acknowledgement. Venerable May stood there quietly. The curtain of night slowly fell, and the biting cold mountain wind started to blow. Venerable May didn't use her Xian Qi to protect her body. She just stood there on the peak of the mountain. Her black robe fluttered behind her and outlined her curvaceous and exquisite figure. Her figure was infinitely beautiful. One could only vaguely see her silhouette from the side. But it was enough to make anyone feel a feeling of peerless elegance, because this vague silhouette alone was enough to make all the women in the world who called themselves beauties feel ashamed of their inferiority. Even though she did not reveal her true appearance, just by standing in the wind, Her peerless beauty and elegance had already caused the bright moon in the sky to lose its splendor. The entire sky had turned completely dark. On the peak of the mountain, a graceful and elegant figure was still standing there motionlessly, allowing her peerless elegance to sway in the night wind. A long time passed. Then someone sighed softly, and a low voice drifted in the wind. "What should I do to you?" The sharp night wind whistled and carried away the lingering sound of those words. That outstanding and peerless figure seemed to flash for a moment, and then the entire world was filled with darkness. It was as if the sky had already lost its last bit of brightness. Although the sky had already turned dark before this, as long as that figure was here, it would be the dazzling green lotus at the peak of the snowy peak. Now that she had left, she had finally taken away the last bit of scenery high up in the sky. The majority of the people who had returned to the southern heaven city had gradually dispersed. After all, the Allied forces had suffered a crushing defeat. The Shui Han Manor was the strongest force on the continent. Even the second great masterly Zhu Tian had been defeated and killed. However, the Shui Han Manor's beasts had returned to the forest, so they wouldn't cause any harm to the continent. Therefore, the Allied forces had achieved their primary objective. So, no one was idle. So, everyone had their own matters to attend to. However, Jun Wui and the others who had been in the limelight during this battle were frowning. Jun Moxie has disappeared. Da Xiao has mysteriously disappeared. This startling turn of events has made these people very anxious. Solitary Eagle, Dongfang Wenqing, and the others searched everywhere, but couldn't find a trace of him. Jun Wui had no choice but to postpone his return and rest for a few days. What he didn't know was that during the few days he had been resting, the Jun family's reputation had soared to the peak in one fell swoop. Countless Xianqi experts who were interested in attending the meeting had spread the news of the Jun family's power and influence in just a few short days. The Jun family could be considered as a prestigious family, but their greatest prestige came from their military prestige. So, the Jun family couldn't be provoked lightly in the eyes of the ordinary families of the pugilistic world. But that didn't mean that they couldn't be provoked. This was especially true for those families with Sky Xian experts, or even Spirit Xian experts. There weren't many forces that couldn't be provoked. Only the Silver Blizzard City, the Shui Han Manor, and a few others. Chapter 370. Inside the tent, Guanqing Han supported her chin with her hand. She stared blankly at the flickering candlelight in front of her and heaved a long sigh. "Sister Guan, are you thinking of Brother Mo Xie?" Dugu Xiaoyi quietly sat on one side. She hadn't seen this innocent and beautiful girl for a few days. She had obviously lost some weight. Moreover, there was an inexplicable worry on her face. She was inexplicably startled after saying this sentence. Do I want Sister Guan's answer to be yes or no? Moreover, she recalled that she had called Guanqing Han Sister Guan and Jun Moxie Brother Mo Xie. Wouldn't that make them a pair? She hastily corrected herself. Are you really thinking of Mo Xie? Guanqing Han turned around and smiled warmly. Xiaoyi, why do you ask? What do you want my answer to be? Dugu Xiaoyi pouted and said, Of course. Jun's third uncle wants you two to be a pair. If you don't think of him, who else would you think of? No one was optimistic about him in the beginning. I was the only one who chose him. Why is everyone trying to snatch him now? After saying this, she suddenly felt a heartfelt grievance in her heart. Her eyes turned red. Guanqing Han's bright eyes flickered as she said, Sister Xiao, don't worry, but he has been gone for such a long time. It's really worrying. It's the kind of worry that a sister-in-law would have for a brother-in-law. It's really not for anything else. Dugu Xiaoyi pouted even more and said, But you're not his sister-in-law now. You're family. You're close to him. Of course, you don't need to think too much. Humph. This guy casually disappears. When he comes back, I'll make sure to... Suddenly, she rolled her eyes and thought of a brilliant idea. She immediately stopped talking, and her face turned red. The more she thought about it, the more she couldn't sit still. After a moment of bashfulness, she hurriedly stood up and said, I'll go out first. I have something to do. As she spoke, she ran out as fast as she could. Guan Qinghan looked at her hurried back in confusion and finally couldn't help chuckling. After laughing, she immersed herself in her own thoughts and sighed again. She looked at the candlelight in confusion and murmured, "What should I do? What should I do? I am really sinful." While everyone was worried about Jun Moxie, Jun Daxiao was also in a huge crisis. Jun Moxie had taken a risk and used the flame of primal chaos to deal with Li Jutian. His attack had been successful, and the results had been incredible. In fact, it had turned the second great master Li Jutian into ashes in one fell swoop. However, the backlash from the flame of primal chaos had left Jun Moxie to suffer a fate worse than death. Jun Moxie had killed Li Jutian at the time. Li Jutian didn't have the strength to fight back. However, Jun Moxie was well aware that his every move was being closely watched by the three strongest experts present: Venerable Mei, Lei Baoyu, and Bu Quangfeng. It wouldn't be difficult to kill Li Jutian at that time, but the difficulty lay in the fact that he would have to kill Li Jutian under the watchful eyes of so many people. Moreover, such a method would expose his true identity at any time. As long as his methods were not in line with his identity as a superpower house, the three of them would not hesitate to make a move and expose his identity. And the Jun family would face a true calamity if that happened. Moreover, there would be no way to save them. However, any effective method would have a high risk of being exposed. Therefore, Jun Moxie had decided to take the risk and use the flame of primal chaos. Jun Moxie had thrown caution to the wind in order to get rid of the Shuehan Manor. Daxiao had been prepared to bear the backlash of the flame of primal chaos. But he hadn't expected that it would come so quickly. Moreover, it would be so intense. Even his incomparably tough nerves were almost unable to bear it. Jun Moxie had always boasted that his bones were hard. He believed that no punishment could make him say anything he didn't want to say. He was confident that he could withstand any kind of torture. In fact, he would die at worst. In his previous life, when he was training to resist torture, he had endured all the punishments. Under his unyielding character, any kind of punishment was nothing more than a life experience. Therefore, Jun Moxie didn't care about any kind of physical or mental pain. Therefore, he acted as he pleased. He would do whatever he wanted. He would laugh, curse, and play around with life. Or he would frown and be aloof. He would do whatever he wanted. Because in this world, there is no longer anything that I fear, or dread. Therefore, he was able to talk and laugh with His Majesty the Emperor, even though he was a debauchee. Moreover, he dared to curse a supreme expert, even though he was a Jade Xian expert. "What do you do to me? Even if you could do anything to me, so what? I've endured the most extreme pain in the world. Moreover, I'm not afraid of death. So, what else can I be afraid of?" Just like acting tough, one also needed to have strength. Only with strength and good mental fortitude can you act tough. Without strength and good mental fortitude, acting tough is just a joke. A prince could show off to his heart's content in front of the county or the common people. A billionaire could also show off to his heart's content in front of the middle class and the poor. They had no scruples at all. Why? Because no one can threaten them. So they aren't afraid. Even if they want to brag, they don't need to worry about it. But can a beggar act tough in front of Superman Lee? That's simply unimaginable. Jun Mo Xie naturally had the capital to back up his pretentious act. "I'm not afraid of anything. I don't care about anything. So why can't I? I have the Hongjun Pagoda. Even if all the experts in the world attack me together, they won't be able to kill me. I have such a strong backing. So why can't I act tough? I've only cultivated for 3 months. That's comparable to other people's 10 years of hard work. I have such a strong backing. So why can't I act tough? If I say that I'm the second genius in the world, then who dares to say that they're the first?" Therefore, Jun Moxie had always been arrogant. He had always looked down on everyone. He even felt that there was nothing in the world that could threaten him. There was nothing that he needed to be afraid of. He didn't need to have any scruples. But now, he knew that he was wrong. In fact, he was ridiculously wrong, because there was some pain that even the soul couldn't bear, not to mention a living person. Jun Mo Xie believed that he would be able to laugh calmly at the pain of his physical body, even if his hands and feet were broken or his bones were scraped to cure poison. However, the pain of his soul was something that could even torture a great principal golden immortal to the point of collapse. For example, right now, it was the backlash of the flame of primal chaos. He was wrapped up in the thick aura of the Hongjun Pagoda. He was holding his head and rolling on the ground in agony. He had never imagined that the backlash of the flame of primal chaos would be so overbearing. There were some things that one shouldn't try, even if one had a reason to take the risk. Jun Moxie hadn't felt the slightest bit of discomfort when the flame of primal chaos had first launched its attack. In fact, he had even felt a kind of faintly discernible feeling of floating in the air. However, Jun Moxie had felt his world turn upside down the moment he had killed Li Jutian and absorbed the flame of primal chaos back into his body. This included the world of his soul and the world of his consciousness. This kind of extreme pain was so intense that even the Hongjun Pagoda's heaven and earth aura, which could heal any kind of pain, was completely useless against it. That was because the flame of primal chaos was the origin of the world's fire, and it was burning the core of his soul at this moment. Jun Moxie clenched his teeth in agony. His facial muscles had contorted. He felt as if his soul was being pulled out of his body inch by inch. Then it burned away bit by bit. It seemed as if there was a small flame burning in his heart. It was burning his fragile heart. It was slowly roasting and roasting, but it was still keeping him alive. He was clearly experiencing the cruelest and most unbearable torture. It felt as if there was a fire in his brain that had been extinguished a long time ago. But it had suddenly reignited. Moreover, it had started to burn faster and faster. In fact, it had started to boil in his brain, but he was still conscious. His nerves of pain had been magnified 1,000,000 times. The black robe on his body had been rolled into a ball and stuffed into his mouth. He had chewed it to a pulp. He wanted to faint, but he didn't dare to do so. That was because he would lose consciousness if he fainted. Then, he would suffer the backlash of the flame of primal chaos. And he would end up like Li Jutian. That would be akin to shooting oneself in the foot. Therefore, the only thing he could do at this moment was to hold on. He was stubbornly holding on to the last bit of clarity in his mind. Jun Moxie would cease to exist in this world once that bit of clarity disappeared. Moreover, he would cease to exist in any world. Compared to the burning of the flame of primal chaos, the tiger stool, chilly water, 20 poisonous bamboo, sticks stuck in the fingers, these kinds of punishments were simply like a drizzle. In fact, it could be said that he had been bitten by a mosquito, and the backlash this time would have been equivalent to having one of his legs smashed. The disparity between the two was enormous. Sweat flowed out of his body like a small river. Then, it evaporated and turned into a cloud of mist. Jun Moxie faced upwards and let out a long and loud scream. He stood up and then fell back down. His entire body was stiff like a zombie. Then his body twisted and contorted on the ground. In fact, it had already violated the limits of the human body. This kind of pain continued for an entire day and night. The dark flame of primal chaos danced cheerfully under the furnace of good fortune. It seemed as if it was cheering for Jun Moxie's suffering. Only the art of unlocking the heavens' fortune persistently operated. It flowed through Jun Moxie's meridians again and again. The thick aura of the Hongjun Pagoda poured into his meridians like a whale. It washed away the impurities in his meridians again and again. The amount of aura that had entered his body this time was far greater than any of the previous times. In fact, it was comparable to the total amount of aura that had entered his body in the past. The rich, milky white aura in the air seemed to be being sucked in by a powerful whirlpool. It issued a continuous whooshing sound as it continuously rushed into Jun Moxie's body. It seemed as if there was no end to it. Chapter 371. Most of the spiritual qi entered from Dashao's Baihui point, and then flowed out from Jun Moxie's Yongquan point, disappearing without a trace. It was as if Da Xiao's body was just a passageway for the spiritual qi to pass through. The only difference was that the spiritual qi would clean this passageway over and over again, striving to make it perfect, without any impurities. But Jun Moxie was completely unaware of all this. That was because he was still immersed in endless pain. Jun Moxie had taken the risk to use the flame of primordial chaos, and, as expected, he had triggered the backlash of the flame of primordial chaos. He had suffered an unimaginable pain, a pain that an ordinary person would never experience in their entire life. This kind of pain could be said to be the pinnacle of pain, if Da Xiao's state of mind was not outstanding, and he was able to maintain his last bit of clarity, if not for Da Xiao's small success in unlocking the heaven's fortune, if not for the massive amount of spiritual qi nourishing Da Xiao's body, Jun Moxie would still have died, and his soul would have scattered, never to be able to transcend. How could the backlash of the flame of primordial chaos be a small matter? But fortune and misfortune always go hand in hand. This saying was not false at all. It was precisely because Da Xiao had endured an unbearable pain that ordinary people could never endure, that he had also achieved a realm that ordinary people could never achieve. And he had also obtained benefits that ordinary people could never imagine. If one wanted to feel good, one had to pay a high enough price. But after bearing the price of one's actions, one would be reborn and reach a new shore. In fact, everything in the world was like this, and there were no exceptions. After suffering comes happiness. If one is not extreme, then comes happiness. Jun Moxie had triggered the backlash of the flame of primordial chaos. This was an almost heaven-defying punishment, and he had to stick to his heart in order to survive this punishment. Of course, the benefits that he would obtain after this punishment were also abnormally huge. This kind of huge difficulty was actually the toughest test. But the price of this test was real. One was in heaven, and the other was in hell. Otherwise, how could an existence like the flame of primordial chaos appear in the insignificant second level of the Hongjun Pagoda? Everything exists for a purpose. On this path to the pinnacle, existence was the most reasonable. Moreover, it would definitely be useful. When he first obtained the Hongjun Pagoda, his body had already undergone the cleansing of his meridians and marrow. It could be said that his physique had already far surpassed that of an ordinary person. However, it was still within the realm of an ordinary person. This time, after going through the continuous cleansing of such a huge amount of spiritual qi, his body had completely changed. For example, if one were to say that Jun Moxie's body was a garbage bag of meat before his transmigration, then after his transmigration, his body would be a genius body after the transformation of the Hongjun Pagoda. Although it was outstanding, it was still within the recognition of many experts. It was within the range that humans could understand and accept. However, Jun Moxie's body could no longer be described with the word body. To put it more exaggeratedly, Da Xiao's body was basically equivalent to Tang Sanzang, who went to the Western paradise to obtain Buddhist scriptures. The reason why it was said to be basic wasn't to say that eldest young master was inferior to monk Sanzang, but that eldest young master was stronger than monk Sanzang. To put it bluntly, monk Sanzang's flesh was an ordinary person's body that contained an unimaginable amount of spiritual energy. But eldest young master's body, in addition to containing a frightening amount of spiritual energy, was far superior to ordinary people. Whether it was his temperament or his soul, his muscles and bones were strengthened, his meridians were all unobstructed, and his body was filled with abundant spiritual qi. Even his internal organs had been completely transformed because of this opportunity, becoming brand new. The young master's original cultivation speed was already abnormal enough, but after this time, he believed that his cultivation speed would be several times faster. Moreover, the path was smooth, and there was no possibility of him going berserk. Because there was no chance of him going berserk, every meridian in his body had been completely opened because of this change. Moreover, they had all been expanded to the maximum limit that a human body could reach. June Moxie's subsequent cultivation was just a process of accumulation, nothing more. For example, if the capacity of an ordinary person's meridians and dantian was a well, then June Moxie's capacity was a large lake. It was just that there was very little water in this large lake. But once this empty lake was filled up, it would become a vast expanse of mist, and the water would connect the sky and the earth, boundless. Of course, this would be a very long process of accumulation. After one day and one night, June Moxie finally slowly recovered. Slowly opening his eyes, June Moxie's heart still had some lingering fear. That terrifying feeling of 18 levels of hell opening up on him at the same time really made this arrogant and fearless evil monarch feel a chill in his heart. It was really too painful. He tried to move his fingers, but he found that he was completely powerless. Every muscle in his body seemed to have turned into cotton. Apart from the strength to breathe, he didn't have any other strength to use. It was like a person who clearly felt that his entire body's functions were normal, but inexplicably became paralyzed, exerting himself to take a deep breath. June Moxie's mind moved, and the art of unlocking heaven's fortune slowly began to move. After one circulation, he suddenly opened his eyes wide in shock. This was completely unimaginable. Before this, the art of unlocking heaven's fortune would need at least a few breaths of time to complete one circulation. But now, in almost an instant, the art of unlocking heaven's fortune had already circulated through all the meridians in his body and returned to his dantian. This was simply an astonishing speed of lightning. Such a godly speed had one biggest advantage. He never had to worry about lacking qian-qi and never had to worry about losing strength. In other words, if he was in a battle, as long as June Moxie was willing, he could fight endlessly, until forever, as long as he did not starve to death or get beheaded by a super expert. What did this mean? This meant that June Moxie was originally a genius, but now he had completely turned into an inexplicable monster. June Moxie was ecstatic. Now, even if he did not have any common sense, he knew that this time he had truly been reborn. Forcefully suppressing the excitement in his heart, June Moxie began to revolve the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. After all, his body's functions were not under his control, and getting rid of this state was the most important thing. If he was still in this paralyzed state, then even if he had an outstanding body, what use would it be? Fortunately, as the qian-qi revolved, the strength controlling his body also recovered bit by bit. Every time the qian-qi revolved, he would feel thoroughly refreshed. Now, training had become a form of enjoyment, not a form of agony or suffering. As his strength returned bit by bit, June Moxie's heart was jumping with joy. This time, he had circulated the qian-qi for a total of 72 circulations. As the last circulation of the qian-qi stopped, June Moxie could clearly feel that his entire body was filled with explosive power. As long as he willed it, he could absolutely destroy anything. June Moxie straightened his back and slowly sat up from the ground. Then, he flipped over and stood up. With a single thought, he immediately cut the qian-qi into the qian-qi circulation channel and waved his hand without cheating. A pale blue light violently shot out and was turned into nothingness by the Hongjun Pagoda's spiritual qi. F*CK. June Moxie sat on the ground. This time, he was 100% shocked. Oh my god, how could it be pale blue? I'm going crazy. Am I dreaming before I was ravaged by the flame of primal chaos? I was only at the peak of the Yu Xian level. How did I reach the Tian Xian level in such a short period of time? Even if I'm riding a rocket, it can't be this fast, right? This huge surprise was a complete accident. After being stunned for a long time, June Moxie finally remembered. Still doubtful, he waved his palm again, as if he was dreaming. That's right, it was pale blue, and its power was enormous. Tian Xian level, this is definitely right. But how is this possible? Don't tell me that using the flame of primal chaos can have such a good effect. June Dashao couldn't help but feel complacent. He had completely forgotten that his soul had almost flown away and dissipated a moment ago. One must know that the flame of primal chaos was the best flame to use in alchemy, but it was also the source of all flames in the world. It was also the most destructive flame in the world. The flame of primal chaos existed in the Hongjun Pagoda, and the Hongjun Pagoda existed in Jun Moxi's consciousness. If he wanted to use the flame of primal chaos, he had to bring it out from the Hongjun Pagoda and let it exist directly in his sea of consciousness. Everyone knew that the so-called consciousness existed in the brain and not in the buttocks. To extract such an extremely dangerous thing from the brain and then turn it into a physical object through the meridians to injure someone, this was definitely more dangerous than a person who didn't know any martial arts and walked on a tightrope on a precipice. Although Jun Moxie knew that this was a risky move, he didn't understand the true power of it and recklessly did this stupid thing that he absolutely shouldn't have done. Furthermore, because of the miraculous effects of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, he was actually able to successfully draw it out of his body. Furthermore, with the help of the Hongjun Pagoda and the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, it protected Jun Moxie's weak meridians and prevented him from dying on the spot. All these conditions couldn't be omitted. It has to be said that although our protagonist's ignorance of cultivation has reached such a terrifying level, his luck is equally good to the point of being invincible. It was like a person who was about to die of poverty, wandering around in a desolate place without any toilet paper and casually grabbing a stone. It turned out to be the only gold nugget within a 3,000-kilometer radius. Right now, young Master Jun was equivalent to this person's luck. Jun Moxie was astonished, but he was already a Tian Xian level beginner. This was an indisputable fact. A 17-year-old Tian Xian level beginner. A Tian Xian level beginner who had only cultivated for 4 months. 4 months ago, he was a mere third-level Xianxi rookie, and 4 months later, he had become a genuine Tian Xian level expert. This kind of terrifying progress was like riding a rocket, and it even had the ability to jump through space. Chapter 372. Wow, this is really cool. Jun Moxie took a few deep breaths and crazily somersaulted a few times with the pure energy of his body. He roared to his heart's content and vented the excitement in his heart. Only then did he stabilize his excited state of mind and enter the path of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. In times of great joy and great sorrow, he must vent. If he forcibly held it in and forced himself to stabilize his state of mind, it was very likely that he would overreach himself and extreme joy would turn into sorrow. Jun Moxie understood this very well. So although he was very anxious to know what kind of situation he was in, he didn't rush to use the art of unlocking heaven's fortune to check. Instead, he did that crazy action just now to vent the excitement in his heart. After venting, whether it was physically or mentally, there would be a subtle psychological hint that I've already vented it. During practice, this aspect of inner demons would be greatly reduced. If he could get rid of this inner demon at such a time, what else could he do? Therefore, Jun Moxie's cultivation process was very smooth. Almost as soon as he raised his spiritual chi, the circulation speed of the cultivation technique reached its limit. Then, he opened his inner vision and carefully examined his own situation. Once again, Jun Moxie's jaw dropped. F***, 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 F***. A series of vulgarities burst out like a machine gun. Apart from this word, Jun Moxie had no idea what else to say. He didn't know what to say either. His mind was a mess, and the only thing left was this extremely vulgar word. This is F***. Jun Mo, Xie shouted wildly. He suddenly extended his hand and slapped his chest a few times. It seemed as if he was showing off his strength like a black bear. It could be seen that the young Master Jun was ecstatic, and in any case, it was inside the Hongjun Pagoda. No one could see it, and no one would know. At this moment, Jun Dashao's entire body was clean and smooth. There was not a single thread of clothing on his body. Dashao's clothes had long been torn to shreds because of the pain and torture he had suffered earlier. Jun Dashao was thoroughly shocked because he suddenly discovered that in his meridians there was a substance that looked like mercury flowing clearly. In fact, the substance itself had a kind of sparkling feeling. Although it looked thin, it contained an inexhaustible amount of energy. At the first level, the qi was formless and intangible. When he reached the second level of the art of creation, it had already turned into a fog that was the same color as the spiritual qi in the Hongjun Pagoda, but now the flow of spiritual qi had disappeared, and a substance had appeared in his meridians. Without a doubt, this was the transformation of spiritual qi. Only when the amount of spiritual qi had reached a certain level would such a qualitative change occur. This was the Xian technique that he had transformed into a substance. This thin silver line indicated that Jun Moxie had already taken one step into the threshold of the third level of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. Finally, he was about to break through again. Jun Moxie once again calmed his mind. He focused all of his attention and once again threw himself into the circulation of the Xian technique. Over and over again, the speed became faster and faster. That thin silver line within his meridians seemed to be emitting a rapid shio-shio sound, as if it was violently trembling and emitting an unwilling hum. One step, two steps, finally, on the peak of the second level, he had taken another step forward. Jun Moxie felt that there was a thin layer of paper in front of him. He only needed to use a little bit of force, and he would be able to pierce through it. At that time, it would be a whole new realm. Jun Moxie slowly exhaled and slowly inhaled. He maintained a calm state of mind. With a slow but increasingly rapid speed, he gradually attacked the bottleneck over and over again. He didn't think of gathering all of his strength to forcefully break through in one go, because success was the right way, and now it was obvious that the time had come for success. Being too hasty would not be ideal. Therefore, Jun Moxie wasn't in a hurry. Moreover, he didn't dare to take any more risks. Who knew if there would be any adverse side effects if he forcefully broke through in one go? Or the danger of some violent impact. Just like this time's flame of primal chaos incident, it had to be said that after experiencing the backlash of the flame of primal chaos, Jun Moxie had truly become much more cautious, finally. Jun Moxie clearly felt that this thin layer had already been slowly pushed back by the impact of his spiritual energy. Then it slowly became thin and slowly became transparent. Finally, it sounded like an extremely weak sigh. The barrier of the third layer finally opened up a tiny hole. It was like a balloon that had been pricked by a needle, but it still burst in the end. Jun Moxie still didn't advance rashly. He continued to steadily push his spiritual energy and slowly injected it bit by bit. Slowly, more and more spiritual energy entered, and finally, bang! Jun Moxie only felt a loud sound in his mind. It was as if the world had turned upside down. For a moment, he felt as if the entire Hongjun Pagoda was spinning. The furnace of good fortune in front of him was sometimes on his left, sometimes on his right, and sometimes on top of his head. The flame of primal chaos was also moving along with it. Jun Moxie was completely unmoved. He once again steadied his mind and resolutely stepped forward. Finally, a huge force suddenly rushed over. This force was so huge that it had far exceeded Jun Moxie's imagination. Jun Moxie only felt the meridians in his body suddenly bulge and then shrink. Without any warning, an illusory stone door suddenly appeared in front of him. The illusory stone door swayed a few times and slowly stabilized, becoming a real door. Jun Moxie stood in front of this door. He felt the spiritual energy in his body emit a cheerful sound like a tsunami. It was as if it had its own spiritual nature. Jun Moxie suddenly felt moved from the bottom of his heart. He had finally reached the third level of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. He had finally opened the third level of the exquisite Hongjun Pagoda. Jun Moxie recalled the pain he had just experienced. It was more painful than the 18 levels of purgatory at the same time. Jun Moxie involuntarily smiled. One can only become a superior person after experiencing the bitterness of suffering. This sentence was not false. Of course, it was just like Jun Moxie's perseverance. This kind of pain wasn't something that everyone could endure. In fact, the vast majority of people couldn't bear it. And if they couldn't bear it, their souls would scatter and they would never be able to reincarnate. Fortunately, Jun Moxie had successfully endured it. Since ancient times, the number of people in both worlds who had been able to survive this ordeal could be counted on 5 fingers. It was enough to be proud. The evil monarch's perseverance were the source of his wild and evil confidence. They were also his true capital. In a trance, a pithy formula suddenly appeared in Jun Moxie's mind. There's a path in the clear sky, but time is not lost. Raise your eyes, and there are jade trees. The heart is full of spiritual mountains, and the mind is full of celestial lakes. The soul moves 9 times, and the Tao of alchemy can be entered, the third level of the Hongjun Pagoda, Qi roaming between heaven and earth. He had finally broken through. From the first level of illumination to the second level of guarding heaven and earth, his Xian cultivation had crossed 9 levels in one go. And this time, he had broken through from the peak of Yu Xian to the beginner of Tian Xian. This was a direct leap of 4 levels. The progress was even more shocking and terrifying. Although it was only 4 ranks, the improvement this time was much, much, much greater. As everyone knew, the higher the cultivation of Xian Qi, the more time it would take, and the levels were clear. There were 4 major difficulties. The first was breaking through 9 levels, which was the dividing point between ordinary people and Xian cultivators. The second was Yu Xian, which was related to the starting point of a person's lifetime achievement. After Yu Xian's realm, even if it was just a small level, if the person's aptitude was slightly insufficient, he or she might not be able to make any progress in his or her life. The younger one was to reach Yu Xian's realm. In addition to showing that he or she had outstanding aptitude, it also meant that he or she might have a higher desire for achievement in the future. Therefore, although Bailey Luo Yun was only at Yu Xian's realm, he had attracted the attention of countless experts. And the third obstacle was to advance from the peak of Earth Xian to Tian Xian, which was a huge divergence in the strength of a Xian cultivator. The difference between the strength before and after the breakthrough could not be calculated with reason. In addition to talent and countless efforts, it also took a lot of time. For an ordinary Tian Xian cultivator's progress, it was almost equivalent to the total amount of time it took to advance from the first level of Xian Qi to the peak of Earth Xian. As for the fourth and final obstacle, it was the Shun Xian realm. Generally, if a Tian Xian cultivator could live for more than 30 years, he or she would definitely be able to advance to the Shun Xian's realm. However, when an ordinary Tian Xian cultivator reached the Tian Xian's realm, most of them had already reached old age. Another 30 years to advance to the Shun Xian's realm was often insufficient. As for the realm above the Shun Xian's realm, it was not a level that a cultivator could reach. Only geniuses with great luck could touch it, but they could not enter these 4 obstacles. In summary, the eldest young master had suffered extremely great hardships this time, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he had narrowly escaped death. However, the rewards he obtained were extremely generous as well. The advancement this time was absolutely an extraordinary leap. Not only was such a rate of advancement unprecedented, it was believed that no one would be able to surpass him in the future. Jun Moxie silently recited the newly obtained pithy formula, and couldn't help but think of the pithy formula of the previous 2 levels. He still remembered that when he was at the first level, there were 2 sentences in the pithy formula: 9 refinements of the soul, do not fall into the yellow springs. When he was advancing to the second level, there was a sentence: 9 transformations of the soul, the Dan heart is stable. And when he reached the third level, as expected, there was another sentence. 9 movements of the soul, the Dan Dao, could be entered in these 3 levels of pithy formula. Other than the word soul, there was also the number 9. Jun Moxie silently nodded, thinking in his heart, there should be a deeper meaning behind this, right? 9 was the extreme number. The Hongjun Pagoda had a total of 9 levels, and the art of creation was also divided into 9 levels. Now, in the pithy formula of each level, there was the number 9, although he had not advanced to the higher levels. But Jun Moxie could imagine that the pithy formula of the higher levels would also have the word 9. Could it be that this was actually hinting at something? Chapter 373. Jun Moxie pondered for a while, but couldn't find an answer. So, he decided to stop thinking about it. Instead, he felt the surging and vigorous aura in his body. It was unprecedentedly active. This made Jun Moxie very excited. I'm no longer a weak little shrimp from this moment on. The initial stage of the sky, profound realm. Although it wasn't very powerful in this continent, where experts were as common as trees in a forest, it was still an unattainable level for an ordinary Xian practitioner. Not to mention that he had many methods that transcended the boundaries of his cultivation. I have the strength to do things openly. I have long wanted to do things, but I don't have the strength to do them. I don't need to rely on my mysterious identity and the Hongjun Pagoda to intimidate people. After all, my fist is the only thing that matters. I still like the feeling of being pretentious, but that isn't my true strength. If there was a day when his true strength could reach that level, what would the situation be like? Jun Moxie's eyes revealed a trace of longing. The mysterious art of unlocking the heaven's fortune has always brought me many surprises. This time, I've reached the heaven realm. What will happen next time? I still remember the few times I watched television in my previous life. I saw those martial arts experts flying in the sky and burrowing into the ground. They could flatten a small mountain with a single palm and kill hundreds of people with a single slash of their swords. But I felt that it was pure nonsense. How can there be such abnormal martial arts in this world? I, the king of assassins, can't do it. So who can? But look at Venerable Mei, Li Ju Tian, Lei Bao Yu, Bu Kuang Feng, and even the beast kings of Tian Fa. I can flatten a small mountain with a single palm. I can even flatten a large mountain. This is the real world that I've personally experienced. It's not fictitious. So what's impossible? Jun Moxie smiled self-deprecatingly. Sure enough, there are limits to one's thinking in any world. Jun Mo Xie put away his messy thoughts and stepped into the room. He stepped into the 3rd level of the Hongjun Pagoda. There should be a magical gift for him here, right? The first level was the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. The second level was the flame of primal chaos, the furnace of good fortune, the yin-yang escape art. Then what about the 3rd level? What kind of surprise was waiting for him? As soon as he entered the door, Jun Moxie immediately felt a sense of awe, an awe that came from the bottom of his heart. It was a unique coldness that could only be felt when facing a peerless treasured saber. It was as if his body was about to be chopped into two by a divine weapon. A wisp of gold floated in the air. The moment Jun Moxie walked through the door, it was like a ghost that had been drifting for thousands of years had suddenly found a host. With a whoosh, it flew over like a bolt of lightning and burrowed into Jun Moxie's forehead without any hesitation. At the same time, another wisp of cyan light floated over silently and drilled into Jun Moxie's glabella. Jun Moxie suddenly felt his whole body overflowing with vitality, followed by a burst of cold, killing intent, quickly fusing with a huge killing intent in his body. At the same time, 2 messages suddenly appeared in his mind. The first message was, turning ordinary iron into wondrous gold, cutting everything into nothingness, the power of gold of the 5 elements. The second message was, with a flick of the fingers, the sky and the earth are covered in an instant. The power of wood of the 5 elements. Power of gold? Power of wood? What was this? Jun Mo Xie's head was filled with confusion. How do these 2 things work? But they were not as simple and clear as the yin-yang escape technique. This was really strange. As he was thinking in a daze, all the spiritual energy in the fourth level of the pagoda rushed into June Moxie's body at the same time. In an instant, it was full. June Moxie slightly revolved it, but found that this power was completely different from the energy flow in his body. It seemed a little special. Could it be that this was some kind of special ability like the yin-yang escape technique? June Moxie tried to revolve it, and suddenly understood. This was because when he circulated this aura, his mental strength became unprecedentedly active. Moreover, it was many times stronger than before. It felt as if it was as mighty as the Yangtze River. With a thought, his spiritual energy violently surged out, and June Moxie instantly understood. This was a spiritual attack, the power of spiritual energy. Closing his eyes, he quietly digested the harvest this time. June Moxie opened his eyes, and they flashed. From now on, I will raise my eyebrows to fight the world, and wave my hand to control the winds and clouds. I truly have the capital to fight head-on. Inside Tianan City, Dugu Xiaoyi unconsciously paced back and forth in her tent. Her pretty face was sometimes bright and sometimes gloomy. Suddenly, she clenched her teeth and said to herself, "Humph, this lady has been eyeing him for a long time. No one will fight for him. I was the first one to discover Imo Siegij. How can I retreat like this? Humph, even if it's a favorable position. So what? This lady naturally has a way." Suddenly, she clenched her teeth and made up her mind. Then, she shouted, "Someone come. Call the Dugu family's guards. This lady has an important matter to tell them." After a short while, the guards hurriedly rushed over. They all had an anxious look on their faces. The little princess had never issued any orders before, but she had taken the initiative to summon them this time. Moreover, she seemed to be in a hurry. Could it be that something big has happened? The people of the Dugu family didn't care what they were doing. They immediately dropped what they were doing and hurriedly rushed over to stand in front of Dugu Xiaoyi. Dugu Xiaoyi pretended to be calm as she faced the Dugu family's guards. She pretended to be dignified, and her beautiful eyes swept around in a serious manner. Then, she coughed twice and cleared her throat. She then said, "I've called you here because there's a problem with a medicine I've been researching." The guards were confused. They looked at each other in dismay. Since when did the little princess start researching medicine? One after another, they said, "What matter does the little princess have? Don't hesitate to tell us. We will obey. But, do you want us to test the medicine? You're thinking of something." Dugu Xiaoyi rolled her eyes. She then nodded her small head in a serious manner and said, "Listen to me. I've been studying the medicine of ancient yellow without eating or sleeping, and I made great progress in this period of time. But I suddenly thought of something that one of my sisters had said in the capital today, and I'm deeply worried about it. So, I've called you here to discuss it. I don't know what the little miss is talking about." The leader of the guards was a 40-year-old middle-aged man. So, he couldn't help but become cautious when he heard the seriousness of Dugu Xiaoyi's words. The little miss's words spanned too much. She was talking about researching medicine a second ago, and she's talking about something else in the next second. Could it be that this matter has something to do with researching medicine? Actually, it's not a big deal. But that, Dugu Xiaoyi rolled her eyes. She didn't know how to phrase her words. But she finally made up her mind and said, "A few of my sisters have said that there's a kind of medicine in this world that can cause great harm to women. And it's very likely that it will cause a lifetime of regret for women. Or it might cause a beautiful woman to die young and commit suicide out of anger. I'm very worried about it. I'm preparing to create an antidote for this kind of medicine. When the time comes, if it's widely disseminated, it can eliminate the thing that women in this world fear the most. It can also be considered as a great good deed." Dugu Xiaoyi tried her best to put on an expression that showed that she was worried about the country and the people. She put on a dignified expression and said seriously, "I want to do my best for the world." Unfortunately, before she could finish her words, her little face had already turned red. Hearing this, everyone seemed to be deep in thought. They seemed to have vaguely guessed Dugu Xiaoyi's intention, but They didn't dare to believe it. The leader of the family guards was sweating profusely. He braced himself and said, "I wonder what Miss is talking about. What kind of medicine is it?" What other kind of medicine could it be? It's that kind of medicine." Dugu Xiaoyi's face turned red. She was a little embarrassed. That kind of medicine. The leader of the family guards was a little confused. He scratched his head, but he still didn't dare to confirm it. So he asked carefully, "What kind of medicine is that? Miss, please tell us the name of the medicine." "You're really stupid beyond redemption." Dugu Xiaoyi was about to flip out. She roared with a red face. "It's an aphrodisiac. Do you understand now?" The 10 or so family guard of the Dugu family were all dumbfounded at the same time. They never thought that their little princess could actually say such a thing. What? Aphrodisiac? Oh my God, this is the taboo of the taboo in the martial world. Only those lowly perverted thieves would use such filthy methods. This audacious little girl. How did she come up with such an idea? Damn it. Dugu Xiaoyi's face was red. She pouted and said angrily, "Why are you all looking at me with that expression? I'm doing this for the thousands of sisters in the world. For the common people. I'm asking you, do you have or not? If you do, quickly hand it over to me. I'll study it for a while, so that I can concoct the antidote as soon as possible." What? Everyone was speechless. Aphrodisiac. Even if they had it, who would dare to take it out openly? Do they still have any shame? Even if they could put down their pride, were they going to give that thing to the little princess of their family? If something were to happen, including themselves, would their entire family in 9 generations be able to survive? Besides, you said that you're studying it, but who knows what it's for? If you were to eat it and personally experiment with it, that would be the end of us. Moreover, it would be the end of the 10 or so people. This matter isn't something to be trifled with. My great aunt. Everyone was complaining incessantly in their hearts. As for making an antidote, we've never heard of this thing needing an antidote. There's only one kind of antidote for this thing, men. We've never heard of any other method apart from this. Everyone knows that pouring cold water over the body and the like won't work. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. It seemed as if they were ducks that had been struck dumb by lightning. You don't have it? Dugu Xiaoyi's long and shapely eyebrows stood up. You're a man, but you don't have an aphrodisiac with you? Are you still men? It had to be said that Dugu Xiaoyi's words were too bold. Chapter 374. How can a man carry an aphrodisiac on him? What kind of logic is this? We have wives and concubines, and we still have money in our pockets. Nowadays, brothels are quite common. Where can't we solve our physiological needs? Is there a need to carry an aphrodisiac? That's a tool used by perverts. If someone were to take out an aphrodisiac, wouldn't that be blatantly telling everyone, I'm a perverted pervert? How can I live in the future? Don't I have any shame? For a moment, the dozen or so burly men opened their mouths and stared blankly. They didn't know how to respond at all, much like wooden and clay statues. I'm only using this to research the antidote. It's really out of kindness, not to do anything bad. Do you guys need to look like this? Dugu Xiaoyi had a guilty conscience, but her mouth was still stubborn. She continued to persuade them, patiently guiding them. Besides, if I research the antidote because of you guys taking out an aphrodisiac, all the women in the world will no longer have to worry. I don't know how many sisters will be grateful to you. You guys are the biggest contributors to this war. Everyone's face darkened, not saying a word. Of course you're not going to do something bad, because even if you want to do something bad, you don't have the ability. In this matter, it seems that other than being taken advantage of, there's no other way for you to take advantage of. Hand it over, just hand it over. Dugu Xiaoyi stretched out her hand, her face full of eagerness. Reporting to Miss, we don't have it. The leader of the guard said, we can have it now. At most you give it to me. I won't tell anyone that it's yours. The little girl's expression became more and more amiable. We really don't have it. We really don't have it. The leader instantly broke out in a cold sweat. If we get an aphrodisiac from me, we'll be immediately dismissed when we return. Moreover, there's no guarantee that there won't be suspicious people torturing us. Even if you beat me to death, I won't give in. Not to mention that we really don't have it on hand. We don't have it either. The 10 or so people replied righteously, standing ramrod straight. Everyone was very clear about this point. What's more, they were out on a regular military operation. They didn't even have time to abstain from sex, yet they were still doing those things. Were their brains really moldy? F***CK. Dugu Xiaoyi scolded in a crisp voice, causing the mouths of the dozen people to twitch. They didn't expect this young lady to scold them in such a direct manner. So many men. Why didn't you bring a single one? The 10 or so people nodded their heads like chickens pecking at rice. Since none of you have, then let's all be punished together. Guards! Dugu Xiaoyi ordered with a murderous look. Drag these 12 fellows out and give each of them 100 strokes. Everyone was dumbfounded. We didn't bring any aphrodisiac with us. We were just honest men at home. How could we have committed a crime? Not only are we good men, but we are also soldiers. Soldiers on the battlefield. Is it wrong not to think about that thing? What kind of logic was that? Heaven, earth, give us a place to reason things out, please. Following Dugu Xiaoyi's order, a few ferocious guards immediately came in. These people were Jun Moxie's personal team. They were selected from the 250 people to take care of Dugu Xiaoyi. Every one of them was skilled in martial arts. They didn't care whether the little lass's order was reasonable or not. They just followed her orders and dragged these people out to carry out the military law. Wait, the leader of the guards broke out in cold sweat. If the 100 strokes were to really hit them, the dozen or so of them would probably be wiped out here. At this point, it was better to comply with the little princess's wishes. After that, they would go and report to Miss Guan Qinghan and ask her to take good care of the little princess. Presumably, nothing would happen to her. If they really lost their lives because of this matter, it would be too unjust. Oh, do you have it now? Dugu Xiaoyi waved her hand to dismiss the guards and asked excitedly, Skinny Monkey, you should have it on you, right? I remember that you had some stashed away when we first left Tianxiang. So take it out. The leader of the guards stared at the thinnest man in the group and said in an indisputable manner, I. The man called Skinny Monkey blinked his eyes pitifully. He didn't know what to say. He hadn't expected that his boss would sell him out under the threat of 100 strokes. You what? Quickly take it out. The leader of the guards rebuked. He then bitterly scolded, You good-for-nothing guy. But I took it for myself. I thought that this trip to the Southern Heaven City wasn't a real military operation. So, I was planning to relax on the way back. Skinny Monkey looked at his boss with a pitiful expression. His skinny face had turned red. In fact, he was so embarrassed that he couldn't show his face. Someone couldn't help but giggle. Explaining is covering up, and covering up means that it's true. What kind of man would carry aphrodisiac with him? Everyone knew the answer to this question without asking. Is it for men to eat? Dugu Xiaoyi's eyes lit up. That's good. That's barely acceptable. Quickly hand it over. I'm anxious to study it. Skinny Monkey was depressed and ashamed. He trembled as he fished out a small paper package from his bosom. He held it in his hand and wanted to hand it over, but he had some misgivings. He had clearly seen the strange look in his companion's eyes as they looked at him. So, he wished that he could dig a hole, jump in, and bury himself in it. This is embarrassing. I don't know how much money I'll have to spend to shut these guys' mouths. It's not a big deal if only these guys know that I'm his brothers. But I'll have to take a knife to my own throat if these people spread the word that I'm not good. Dugu Xiaoyi became impatient when she saw that guy's shyness. She suddenly jumped over and snatched the package. She laughed happily. Then, she remembered that she had to keep a straight face. She asked seriously, This thing, how do I use it? Skinny Monkey's face and neck turned red. He struggled and said, You just need to pick up a fingernail, dissolve it in wine, and drink it. A few people behind him couldn't help but burst out laughing. Then, they hurriedly covered their mouths with their hands and coughed. Their bodies spasmed, and the muscles on their faces twisted. Oh, Dugu Xiaoyi nodded in understanding. She had the appearance of an expert. She asked, What's the reaction after using it? Will it harm a body? This won't. As for the reaction, sweat as big as soybeans fell from Skinny Monkey's face. He really didn't know how to answer. His face had almost turned sallow. Everyone behind him moved in the same manner. They covered their mouths with one hand and covered their stomachs with the other. Then their bodies started to tremble. "Oh, I know. There's nothing else for you to do. You can all go." Dugu Xiaoyi's face turned red. She seemed to have realized that her question was inappropriate. So, she waved her hand. Everyone felt as if they had been pardoned from a crime. They hastily turned around and walked out. But they heard Dugu Xiaoyi shout, "Wait. This matter is a secret. Do you understand? This matter concerns the happiness of millions of women. So it must not be leaked." Dugu Xiaoyi spoke in a dignified manner. "Especially my brothers. They can't know about it. Do you understand? Well, I'm afraid that they'll steal it. Yes, I'm afraid that they'll steal it. What can we do about it?" "What? Afraid that they'll steal it? Do the Dugu family's dashao need to steal it?" Everyone's complexion became extremely strange. Dugu Xiaoyi's brothers would have vomited blood and fainted if they had heard these words. "We're very normal." Dugu Xiaoyi glared at them. "So they can't know about it. If someone told them, I'll pour the entire packet into someone's stomach. Do you understand?" "Yes, we understand." Everyone hastily retreated. They hadn't gone far when they suddenly threw themselves on the ground. They then started to roll on the ground while laughing. In fact, they were laughing so hard that they couldn't stop. Skinny Monkey was angry and ashamed. His eyes were wide open. His cheeks didn't have much flesh to begin with, but he was also trembling. "Ha ha ha, I'm dying of laughter. Skinny Monkey is such a resourceful person. It's really unexpected. No wonder this guy always runs far away whenever we go to a brothel. Ha ha ha, these young masters also steal it. I'm so proud." Several people held their bellies and started to roll on the ground. They were laughing so hard that they started to roll on the ground. Skinny Monkey's face turned purple as he trembled. He suddenly hugged a tree and ferociously hit his head against it a few times. He wanted to cry, but no tears came out. The leader of the family guards coughed a few times after laughing enough. He then said, "I've laughed enough. So I must tell everyone that no one is allowed to divulge today's matter. I believe that everyone knows the consequences of this matter once it gets out, and none of you will have a good time when that time comes. Today, no one has received 100 strokes of the stick. So I'm sure that no one wants to be punished by military law in the future. Do you understand?" Everyone nodded and indicated that they would keep this a secret. "I must go and see Miss Guan. I must ask her to take good care of the little princess. But we mustn't cause a disaster." The leader of the family guards hurriedly left in the tent. Dugu Xiaoyi carefully wrapped the small paper bag with her handkerchief. She then put it in her bosom and guiltily looked left and right. Then she exposed a complacent smile. Humph, humph, humph. Dugu Xiaoyi was very happy. She wanted to sing. She smiled and revealed a pair of small canine teeth. Then she bounced over to the mirror and carefully examined her face. She then muttered to herself, "I'll see where you can run to. Humph, humph. June Moxie, I'm going to force myself on you. I'm going to cook the raw rice into the cooked rice, and you're going to run away. Humph, Sister Guan, don't blame this little sister for being disloyal. Hee hee, let's see how you're going to snatch it now." Dugu Xiaoyi beamed with joy as she thought of this. Then she made a funny face. Chapter 375. Because Dugu Xiaoyi had once heard someone say, if a man and a woman made rice out of raw rice, then they would never be separated again. At least the man would have to be responsible for the woman. Of course, how did raw rice become cooked rice? Dugu Xiaoyi really didn't know. As for the effects of the aphrodisiac, Dugu Xiaoyi was even more clueless. The only thing she knew was that this aphrodisiac was a necessary tool to make rice out of raw rice, and that was why such a big show had been created today. Brother Imo, Xie is mine alone, humph humph. Dugu Xiaoyi opened her luggage and rummaged through her clothes, and then, one by one, she gestured at her body, as if considering which clothes to wear would be the most effective in making this pot of raw rice of June Moxie into a fragrant cooked rice. At this time, the young Master June who was currently in Hongjun Pagoda, would never have imagined that he had already been treated as a pot of rice by a certain little demoness. Furthermore, she was currently rubbing her palms together, preparing to cook him. If he had known, perhaps there would be no need for Dugu Xiaoyi to cook him. He would have cooperatively been cooked, and there would be no need for such a strenuous effort, and it would definitely be a soft landing. Dugu Xiaoyi was humming a little tune as she searched for clothes when the curtain behind her suddenly lifted, and an elegant fragrance assaulted her, but it was Guan Qing Han. It turned out that the leader of the family guards had gone to look for Guan Qing Han, but of course he didn't dare to say that it was about the aphrodisiac, and only stammered, saying that there had been some abnormalities in the past few days, and that her mood wasn't quite right, and that he and the other family guard were worried that something had happened, and said that it was some old illness, and so on. The more he hemmed and hawed, the more worried Guan Qinghan became. She really thought that Dugu Xiaoyi had some strange old illness. Finally, after hearing what he had to say, she hurried over. "Little sister Xiao, what happened to you? Do you feel uncomfortable there?" Guan Qinghan asked worriedly as soon as she entered the room. The sudden question made Dugu Xiaoyi, who was immersed in a sweet dream, jump in fright. She screamed and turned around. Panicking, she asked, "Elder sister Guan, why are you here? Do you also want that medicine?" "Medicine? Me? I'm not sick. Why would I want that thing?" Guan Qinghan was sure that Dugu Xiaoyi was really sick. Otherwise, why would she take medicine? "And he's even urging me to eat too?" "Oh." Dugu Xiaoyi heaved a sigh of relief. She patted her chest in shock and said with lingering fear, "I thought you were here to compete with me for cooking, so it's not like that." Thank goodness you're not." "Cooking? What kind of cooking?" Guan Qinghan cried out in surprise. The worried look on her face deepened. She reached out her hand to touch Xiao Yi's forehead. "Little sister Xiao Yi, what happened to you? Why are you speaking so incoherently today?" "Yes, just now she asked me if I wanted medicine, and now she's saying that I'm competing with her for cooking. This is a military camp. Why do I need to cook? Besides, does Dugu Xiaoyi know how to cook? What's with all this nonsense?" "I'm fine. I'm really fine. Nothing happened to me." "Ha ha ha." Dugu Xiaoyi laughed dryly. She looked a little flustered. She touched the small cloth bag in front of her chest with a guilty conscience. She felt a little calmer in her heart. She raised her head and secretly looked at Guan Qinghan. Then she stammered, "By the way, elder sister Guan, is he back?" "Not yet." A worried look appeared on Guan Qinghan's face. She comforted her. "Don't worry. It's okay. He's so powerful and has so many tricks up his sleeves. What could happen to him? I think he'll be back in a while." Dugu Xiaoyi chuckled and said with relief, "That's right. This guy is very capable. He'll definitely be fine. I'm still waiting for him to come back. I need something from him." "You're waiting for him to come back? Why are you looking for him?" Guan Qinghan thought. Could it be that Xiao Yi is overly worried about Mo Xie and has lost her mind? The more she thought about it, the more likely it seemed. She couldn't help but become even more worried. "I'm waiting for him to come back to cook." "Ha! Dugu Xiaoyi had almost let the cat out of the bag. So, she hastily said, "I'll go out and take a look. Why hasn't little White returned yet? I haven't seen that little cutie for several days. I really miss him." She lowered her head with a red face and kneaded the corner of her clothes. Then, she hurriedly walked out. She blamed herself as she walked. Dugu Xiaoyi, why can't you keep your cool? What if the plan is leaked and elder sister Guan finds out about it? She'll strike first to gain the upper hand. What should I do then? Guan Qinghan secretly made up her mind. It seems that Xiao Yi has a real problem. Otherwise, she wouldn't look like this. She's talking incoherently, and her actions are even more abnormal. I must keep a close eye on her. So, she also followed her out. It was already noon of the third day by the time Da Xiao came out of the Hongjun Pagoda. He had been pondering nonstop on his way back to Tiannan City. These new powers of metal and wood are very magical, but it's a pity that I don't know how to make use of them. That turning ordinary iron into wondrous gold, cutting all things into nothingness. Does it mean that I can turn ordinary iron into a divine weapon as long as I use this magical power? This is the only way to cut all things into nothingness. However, Jun Moxie secretly cursed himself as he thought of this. Damn, how can there be such a good thing in this world? Isn't this the same as turning stone into gold? No, it's even more abnormal than turning stone into gold. It's a legendary immortal technique. Poor Jun Daxiao. He still doesn't know that all the techniques he's practicing are actually immortal techniques. Moreover, they're the highest level and ultimate techniques. For such a person to be able to cultivate smoothly all the way until now, it was truly an anomaly that had never been seen since ancient times. Moreover, the speed of his cultivation was so fast. This was a strange matter that no one could understand, no matter how hard they racked their brains. Jun Moxie calculated the time. He realized that he hadn't shown up for 2 days. The third uncle must be getting anxious. Maybe the third uncle is better off. After all, the third uncle knows his methods. But the 3 uncles must be very anxious. So, he didn't dare to delay. He went straight back. He had just entered Tianan City when he bumped into Dongfang Wenjian. He was scolded by this uncle. Then, he was escorted into Jun Wui's tent. The news of Jun Moxie's return naturally reached the ears of Guan Qinghan and Duga Xiaoyi. Guan Qinghan finally let out a sigh of relief. Her heart was filled with joy. Duga Xiaoyi suddenly blushed. Her heart was beating fast. She didn't recover after a long time. Who knows what that little girl is thinking? After dealing with Jun Wuyi's barrage of reprimands, the young Master Jun's skin was thicker than the walls of the city. So, he laughed and ran away like a wisp of smoke and ran back to his tent. Sitting on the chair, Jun Moxie thought about his new ability. He finally took an ordinary steel knife that was hanging in the tent. He held it in his hand. He wanted to test out his new magical power. Junimo Xie took a deep breath as he looked at the blade. He then closed his eyes and activated the power of gold in his body. It passed through his meridians and moved to his palms. Then it passed through his fingers and slowly reached the blade in his hand. The cold light of the blade flickered in his hand. In the blink of an eye, something strange happened. A faint golden light flickered. It was as if the blade of the steel knife was reflecting a sky full of stars. It emitted a dreamy brilliance. Suddenly, the light brightened. Then, it disappeared without a trace. A faint green smoke appeared. Jun Moxie opened his eyes. He looked at his hand. He was stunned. Oh my God! The big knife that was half the length of a man in his hand had disappeared. And now, what existed in his hand was only a small knife the size of a toothpick, perhaps. It couldn't be called a knife anymore. It should be called a needle. It was just a slightly bigger needle. But it was 10 times heavier than a normal needle. Moreover, this needle was in the shape of a knife. It was the same as what Jun Moxie had imagined. When Jun Moxie had activated this power, he had imagined the shape of a knife. It was this small knife in front of him. The only difference was that it had shrunk by a few thousand times. That was all. Junimo Xie didn't know whether to laugh or cry. After all, Junimo Xie had come to realize that the phrase transforming ordinary iron into wondrous gold really existed after he had experimented with it. Moreover, this cultivation technique truly possessed such a heaven-defying ability. However, it wasn't that the whole piece of iron could be turned into magical gold. Instead, the ordinary iron had to be compressed to the highest degree. Then, the most essential part of the iron would be preserved and extracted. Then, it would form the shape that he wanted. Then, what about the rest of the iron? Where did it go? Did it evaporate into thin air? Jun Moxie was puzzled. He went out and brought in another knife. He activated the divine power again and concentrated on observing the transformation process. Only then did he see it clearly. It turned out that he had guessed correctly. It had really evaporated after the faint gold flash for a while. There was a burst of dazzling light. Then it disappeared. Along with this burst of light, a faint smoke rose from the knife. It emitted a strange smell that made one want to vomit. As the smoke rose, the big knife in his hand disappeared. It turned into a pocket-sized knife that was as small as a toothpick. Junimo Xie smiled bitterly. If he wanted to forge a saber with the same length and thickness as the 2 sabers he had melted, he would probably need a small mountain's worth of fine iron to do so. Moreover, this toothpick-sized thing actually weighed close to 2 taels. If he used this material to make a knife like that, wouldn't it weigh a few hundred kilograms? The divine weapon was indeed a true divine weapon, but who could wield it? Jun Moxie loosened his hand. The 2 small toothpick-sized knives slipped through his fingers. He heard 2 chi-chi sounds, and an unbelievable thing appeared in front of him. The willow table in front of Junimo Xie had actually been pierced with 2 small holes. The 2 toothpick knives pierced through the table like a hot knife through butter, but did not stop. With 2 so sounds, the knives directly drilled into the ground. In fact, the handles of the knives could not be seen. Chapter 376. Today's explosion. 3rd update has arrived. 4th update is in progress. Oh my god! Jun Moxie's eyes were perfectly round. He hastily reached out his hand and picked up the 2 small toothpick knives from the ground. He discovered that the hilt of the knives had penetrated at least 2 feet into the ground. Moreover, they were still continuing to fall. This is too awesome. Jun Moxie sized up the 2 toothpick knives. He couldn't bear to part with them. Jun Moxie knew that the knives had fallen when he had loosened his grip a moment ago. So, he hadn't used even the slightest bit of strength when he had held them. The 2 toothpick knives had pierced through the 5-centimeter thick willow wood table like a hot knife through butter. Moreover, they had effortlessly pierced through the air, as if they had pierced through the air. What kind of concept was this? What kind of level of sharpness had these 2 knives reached? This was the ultimate godly weapon that everyone yearned for even in their dreams. Wouldn't it be tantamount to elevating their Xian cultivation to an exaggerated level if I were to use this method to forge such a sword for my grandfather, 3rd uncle, and the others? In fact, it would be even more abnormal. A good weapon can increase a person's strength by a considerable amount. An average person wouldn't be able to wield such a weight. But a weight of 300 or 400 pounds wouldn't require much effort for his grandfather, who was at the peak of Tian Xian, and his uncle, who was at the middle level of Tian Xian. Even if they weren't used to it at first, they would be able to familiarize themselves with it after 10 or so days of practice. I believe that even a great master or a Xian beast king with tough skin wouldn't be able to resist such sharpness. Lei Wu Bei's treasured knife would have been a godly weapon if he had made it that day. Then, the outcome of the battle against the Snake King would have been different. In fact, the battle against the venerable Mei would have been even more unpredictable. I'll use this thing as a secret weapon. Jun Moxie laughed in an unusually lascivious manner. His eyes shone. He had already thought of countless ways to deal with his enemies with this thing. Good stuff, really good stuff. At least from now on, his flying daggers were truly invincible. What kind of expert in the world could resist a divine weapon of this level? The answer was absolutely no one. Some might be able to dodge it, but no one would be able to withstand it. Kill God if you meet God. Kill Buddha if you meet Buddha. Junimo Xie chuckled mischievously a few times. Only now did he feel weak all over his body. He was about to return to the paralyzed state he was in when he used the flame of primal chaos. He hurriedly took in a breath of spiritual energy and slowly began to recover. Sigh, there's no such thing as a handout in this world. Even refining 2 small toothpick knives actually requires so much energy. What Jun Moxie didn't know was that he had used this ability twice in a row after obtaining it. Moreover, he was afraid that he wouldn't have enough power each time, so he used all his strength. It was already not easy for him to hold on for so long. This ability was similar to the power of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. It also needed to be cultivated step by step. How could there be such a good thing in this world if he wanted to become a fatty in one bite? Even a top-notch immortal cultivation technique wouldn't be enough. Cold sweat dripped down his forehead as Jun Moxie moved 2 steps forward. He then leaned against the chair as he circulated the art of unlocking heaven's fortune faster and faster. His physical strength was gradually recovering bit by bit. Brother Mo Xie, you're back. Are you inside? Dugu Xiaoyi's sweet voice came from the door. She sounded a little shy and embarrassed. Then the door curtain was lifted, and Dugu Xiaoyi came in sneakily. She was holding an exquisite wine gourd. She stuck her head out and sneakily walked in. Could it be that the overlord has come to draw the bow? Dugu Xiaoyi felt a little guilty at the moment. In fact, she was even a little annoyed. That was because Jun Moxie had come back at the wrong time. He had come back in the morning. Why couldn't he have come back in the evening? This made Dugu Xiaoyi, who was preparing to cook, very disappointed. But she tilted her head and pondered for a long time. Then, she decided to sound him out first before deciding on her next move. I won't cook him if Jun Moxie can give me a definite promise. Humph, humph. I won't be able to say anything if he still refuses. I'll cook him on the spot. I prepared both ways to appease an overlord. Of course, Dugu Xiaoyi had also prepared the medicinal wine in case she needed it. My father always said that only by being prepared can we win every battle we have ever fought. Therefore, Dugu Xiaoyi had thought of every possible way to get rid of Guanxing Han. Then, she had quietly slipped away. Ah, elder sister, why are you here? Jun Moxie waved his hand weakly. He had only recovered a little bit. He was barely able to move his hands and mouth. But that was already his limit. So, he had to make the best use of his time in order to recover faster. I've come to cook, huh? No, I just wanted to ask you. Humph, you still have a nerve to ask me why I've come? You've been out for so long, but you didn't say anything. And you've come back so sneakily. Don't you know that someone is worried about you? Dugu Xiaoyi pursed her lips. She hadn't even realized that her tone had already become like that of a housekeeper. The little girl was also very careless. She only noticed that Jun Moxie looked very weak after she had finished speaking. So, she was shocked and threw herself at him. What's wrong with you? Why do you look so pale? Did you get injured on this trip? Jun Moxie snorted and said, It's nothing. Don't make a fuss. Just give me a glass of water. Then, he remembered that he hadn't drunk a drop of water for 2 days. And he had sweated a lot when he was suffering from the flame of primal chaos in the Hongjun Pagoda. No wonder his body was so weak. It was already very fortunate that he wasn't dehydrated. After he had broken through, his spirit had been in a state of high excitement. Moreover, he hadn't returned for 2 days. Moreover, he was in an unfamiliar place. Moreover, he was in the midst of a chaotic war. So, the third uncle must have been very anxious. So he had hurried back. After he had finished explaining things to the third uncle, he became curious about his newly acquired ability. So he had forcibly used his new ability to transform ordinary iron into wondrous gold twice. This had completely consumed all the energy in his body. No wonder he was so tired. Jun Moxie smiled bitterly in his heart. It would be strange if he wasn't tired now. Such a low-level mistake had actually happened to him. It seemed that things had been going too smoothly for him during this period of time. This kind of careless mentality was absolutely unacceptable. Jun Moxie had always been like this. On the surface, he had always been arrogant. However, his heart was extremely meticulous, especially towards his own shortcomings. He would never conceal them. He would only find them at the first moment and then correct them to ensure that he wouldn't repeat them. This was also one of the major trump cards that allowed him to ascend to the throne of the King of Assassins in his previous life. Living in a dangerous state where he could lose his life at any time, as an assassin, being cautious had already become his instinct. Dugu Xiaoyi turned around anxiously. She casually placed the wine gourd in her hand on the table in front of Jun Moxie. Then, she almost ran to pour some water. Jun Moxie's eyes couldn't help but brighten up when he saw the gourd. Was this girl stupid? Obviously, there was an excellent drink here. Why did she give up what was close at hand to fetch water from afar? He grabbed it and unscrewed the lid. He smelled the fragrance of the wine. It was the time when he was the most thirsty. How could Jun Moxie care so much? He raised his head and took a big gulp. Then he directly stuffed it in his mouth and drank it all up. Jun Moxie didn't drink much of the wine in this world. In addition, the wine in this world didn't have any other advantages except for the strong fragrance. Otherwise, how could it cover up the earthy smell of the wine? It couldn't be helped. The wine craftsmanship in this world was relatively poor. June Moxie was also very thirsty. Moreover, he was in his own tent in a military camp. Who would think so much? Therefore, June Dashao really didn't taste anything. Instead, he felt that there was a sweet taste of honey. It was really not bad. Little did he know that in order to make this wine more delicious, Dugu Xiaoyi added a lot of honey in it. This greatly reduced the possibility of June Moxie discovering something fishy. What a pity. The evil monarch of a generation had been careful for 2 generations. Yet, he fell into the hands of a girl who was usually very careless. Could it be that even a wise man would make a mistake? Or perhaps it was fate making a fool out of people. June Moxie had just drunk the whole gourd of wine. He felt that it wasn't enough. He even felt more thirsty. Da Xiao didn't take it to heart. Wine wasn't used to quench thirst. It was common for the more he drank, the more thirsty he became. At this time, Dugu Xiaoyi had just returned with a cup of water. When she turned around, she saw that June Moxie had already drunk the whole gourd of wine in the blink of an eye. He even put the empty gourd on the table. This was no small matter. Completely unprepared, the cup fell to the ground with a paw sound. The quality of the cup was obviously not up to standard. Naturally, it directly shattered into pieces. I haven't even thought about whether I should start cooking now. Why did he drink that? What should I do? What is this? Should I cook or not? The little girl stared blankly at June Moxie. Her eyes were wide open, and she had completely lost her composure. She didn't know what to do next. The so-called forcing yourself on the bow was just a way of saying it. The little girl was completely clueless as to what to do. So, she didn't know what to do. June Moxie's throat was still dry after he finished drinking the gourd of wine. But his body had recovered a lot of strength. At least, it didn't affect his normal activities. He was surprised to see that the little girl had broken the cup. But he knew that Dugu Xiaoyi had a rash temperament. So, he didn't take it to heart. He stood up with a hey sound. Then, he walked over to Dugu Xiaoyi's side. Then, he took the water bag from her back and drank to his heart's content. He put down the water bag after he had drunk enough. Then, he panted in satisfaction. I'm a bit dehydrated, but my body has recovered a lot after drinking the water. He saw that Dugu Xiaoyi was looking at him as if she had been struck by lightning. Her eyes were wide open, her eyebrows were raised, and her rosy lips were slightly open. She looked very cute. So, he couldn't help but stroke her head in amusement. He then asked, "Little girl, what are you looking at? You're really something. You dropped the cup of water on the ground. It's fine if it dropped. Why are you so scared? Are you afraid that I'll scold you?" Dugu Xiaoyi blinked her eyes twice. Then, she came back to her senses. She ignored June Moxie and rushed to the front of the table. Then, she grabbed the wine gourd and shook it with all her strength. The wine gourd didn't have the weight of a moment ago. So, it didn't emit any sound even though she had shaken it with all her strength. Chapter 377. Dugu Xiaoyi wanted to cry, but had no tears to shed. What should she do now? That was a big bag, a whole big bag. Just like that, in such a short amount of time, it had all melted into the gourd. Heavens, I only wanted him to drink 1 cup. Really, I only wanted him to drink a small cup. No one would have thought of this mistake. Normal people would have a certain amount for everything, but this brat Dugu Xiaoyi of the heavenly way was extremely careless. Dugu Xiaoyi had actually poured the whole bag into the gourd. Even if it was drugging, there was no way to do it this way, right? Anyone who saw this would shake their heads. Not to mention 1 June Moxie, even 3 June Moxies wouldn't be able to stop this amount. This was going to cost them their lives. The problem was, whose life would it cost in the end? Dugu Xiaoyi didn't have a single thought in her head right now. Brat, what's wrong with you today? Seeing Dugu Xiaoyi's strange expression, June Moxie asked curiously. No, nothing. Dugu Xiaoyi was flustered. She looked at June Moxie from head to toe. She scanned him from head to toe. She scanned him up and down several times. However, he didn't seem to have any abnormalities. Dugu Xiaoyi felt that something was wrong. The amount was definitely not small. Dugu Xiaoyi cautiously asked with hope in her voice, "Are you all right? What can I be? Oh, I was a little dehydrated just now. But I'm fine now that I've drunk enough water. Jun Imo Xie was a little baffled. In fact, he couldn't even make head or tail of the situation. I just drank a lot of water in one go. How can something like that happen? He thought that the little brat was asking about his abnormal behavior earlier, so he naturally had to explain a little. Pretty good? Really pretty good? Don't you feel very hot, like you're being cooked? Dugu Xiao, he felt slightly relieved in her heart. She then asked in a scientific tone. The little girl's heart was filled with anticipation, but Dugu Xiaoyi would never have guessed that this anticipation would soon make her cry. The feeling of being cooked? No. Jun Moxie was even more puzzled. What was wrong with this girl today? Even the words he said were so strange. He was a living person, and he wasn't going to be eaten. How could he be cooked? Jun Moxie reached out his hand to touch Dugu Xiaoyi's forehead. He repeated a few times to make sure that Dugu Xiaoyi didn't have a fever and wasn't sick. Only then did he say, Lass, are you feeling unwell? Why are you acting so weird today? That's good, that's good. It's good that you don't feel that way. That's good. Looking at Jun Moxie's reaction, Dugu Xiaoyi patted her chest and let out a long breath. Although she was looking forward to seeing Jun Moxie being cooked, the amount made Dugu Xiaoyi secretly worried. She was afraid that he would cause some trouble. But seeing that Jun Moxie's reaction was normal, Dugu Xiaoyi was more or less relieved. However, just when Dugu Xiaoyi was relieved, she thought of something. Suddenly, her face was full of anger, and she secretly said in her heart, That's too hateful. That brat actually gave me a fake one. Of course, it couldn't be fake. But Dugu Xiaoyi, who had never seen these things, naturally wouldn't think in this direction. The medicinal effect also needed time to take effect. In this world, other than the imperial medicine that would kill once it entered the throat, how could other medicine take effect so quickly? Obviously, the little girl didn't understand the seriousness of the matter. Seeing that Da Xiao was not acting strangely, she let out a long breath and directly ignored the matter in front of her. Fake? What fake? Jun Moxie sighed helplessly. His fingers rubbed his temples as he thought about Dugu Xiaoyi's words. He vaguely guessed that this little girl was most likely doing something mysterious again. Thinking of this, Jun Moxie felt a little headache and said, Little lady, what's wrong with you today? Why are you saying things that others can't understand? Can't you say something serious? How could Dugu Xiaoyi care about Jun Da Xiao's question? Her heart was full of the feeling that she had been deceived. The more she thought about it, the angrier she got. The more she thought about it, the more vexed she became. Suddenly, she shouted, That's too hateful. She was about to rush out. Looking at her posture, if she rushed out this time, that skinny monkey-like guy would definitely not have the chance to take the medicine. At this moment, Dugu Xiaoyi was impulsive. What she had been looking forward to the most, Da Xiao was cooked, was finally going to happen. While they were talking, the medicine was taken. With such a delay, it began to take effect slowly. At first, it wasn't fast, and there wouldn't be a particularly strong effect immediately. With Jun Moxie's physique, he didn't care about this little difference at all. Then, as time went on, the medicine flowed through his blood vessels to the whole body, and the increasingly strong effect would soon be experienced by Jun Moxie. Moreover, Jun Moxie was already an innate spiritual body, and he had some resistance to this kind of medicine with negative effects. If it wasn't for the fact that he was too thirsty and drank it in one gulp, and Dugu Xiaoyi's terrifying amount, Jun Moxie wouldn't be affected at all. At most, he would be excited for a while. But now it was different. Previously, Jun Moxie was so thirsty that he was almost dehydrated. He drank the whole gourd of wine in one gulp, and his dry blood vessels were instantly filled with this medicine. Moreover, this was a medicine that could stimulate a man's ability. Although it was a little strange, it wasn't poison. Therefore, the Hongjun Pagoda's spiritual energy was also helpless against it. Jun Da Xiao already looked like he was going to be cooked. Who's the hateful one? Tell me, I'll help you vent your anger. Seeing that Dugu Xiaoyi was about to leave, Jun Moxie reached out to stop her. What a joke. I was just curious about this girl, and you want to leave without explaining? Do you think you can leave? Jun Mo Xie wanted Dugu Xiao to get rid of all the tricks he had up his sleeves. They're too hateful. Dugu Xiao's face turned red, and she was unable to restrain her anger. I just wanted to cook a meal, but they didn't give me the real thing. They're too much of a bully. Seeing that I don't understand this, they casually gave me something to fool me. Do I look so gullible to you? Dugu Xiao rubbed her palms together, and her long, shapely eyebrows rose, and her murderous aura surged. But the little girl instinctively felt that something was wrong as she spoke. Dugu Xiao raised her head and paused. She looked at Jun Moxie and blinked her eyes. Suddenly, she said, Brother Mo Xie, what's wrong? Why is your face so red all of a sudden? Jun Mo Xie also felt that there was something wrong with his body when Dugu Xiao asked this question. His whole body was showing signs of heating up. Moreover, there seemed to be a raging inferno burning in his dantian. His eyes slowly turned red, and he felt as if a volcano had erupted in his heart. Suddenly, a primal impulse burst forth. What's going on? Jun Moxie was astute. Having lived 2 lives, he knew what this fire was. So, he gritted his teeth and lowered his head. He used his remaining consciousness to think about it. Then, he cursed Dugu Xiao 100 times in his heart. Girl, oh girl, you can play with anything, but you're playing with me. My innocence of 2 lives will be ruined by your hands. Thinking of his innocence, he looked at Dugu Xiao in front of him. The more he looked, the more his blood boiled, and he couldn't control himself. Jun Moxie struggled with the pain in his heart. His complexion became more and more ferocious. You, what's wrong with you? Don't scare me, you. I. The little girl started to be afraid, and she retreated in panic. Dugu Xiao looked at Jun Moxie's ferocious face. Her female intuition inexplicably sensed a great crisis. Now, the little girl didn't have the courage to cook anymore. Not to mention watching Jun Moxie being cooked, Dugu Xiao had a strange thought in her heart. The drug is real. Look, he's being cooked. I want to go home. Jun Moxie's breathing became heavier. He tried his best to resist this innate male instinct, but he felt that he couldn't resist it anymore. The green dress Dugu Xiao in front of him, and the faint fragrance of a girl, constituted a fatal temptation to him, an irresistible temptation. He didn't want to endure it anymore. It was too hard for him to endure. That wine gourd, was it you who put the drug in it? Jun Moxie approached her step by step. The air coming out of his nostrils was hot, as if it was on fire. Yes, I just want to cook you. I don't mean anything else. Dugu Xiao looked at him pitifully. As Jun Moxie approached, she retreated step by step. She was at a loss of what to do, and her eyes darted around in panic. She was almost scared to tears by his ferocious look. You want to cook me? What do you mean? Even though Jun Mo Xie's mind was in a state of chaos, he was still stunned for a moment. After thinking for a moment, he understood that it was cooked rice. He couldn't help but laugh angrily. He couldn't help but have no more misgivings. Gritting his teeth, he teased, If you want us to cook rice, do you still need to drug it? I'll be cooked with just a wave of your hand. Why bother? But you're not cooked yet. Don't come over. Dugu Xiao trembled and curled up. She had already retreated to the corner of the tent. There was no place for her to retreat. At this moment, Dugu Xiao felt extremely wronged. Why? He obviously drank the drug, but why does he still treat me like this? And he had become so frightening. I'm so scared. He looks so fierce now. Dugu Xiao felt her whole body stiffen. When her eyes met with Jun Moxie's, she felt as if she was being electrocuted. The fear in her heart grew stronger. No matter how hard Dugu Xiao tried to endure, she had finally reached her limit. She cried loudly, I'm wrong. Please let me go. I don't want to play anymore. I really don't want to play anymore. Now, the little girl was truly regretful. But if she had known that this would happen today, she wouldn't have done it in the first place. You started it, but it's not up to you to decide how and when to stop. In such a short period of time, Jun Moxie had already endured quite unbearably. He had already reached the point where he had no choice but to release the arrow on the bowstring. However, The current situation was something that Dugu Xiaoyi had never expected. Moreover, it was completely out of her expectations. Sob, why didn't anyone tell me about this before? Seeing that a real fight was about to break out in the tent. Suddenly, June Moxie, what are you doing? A clear and melodious shout rang out. At this critical moment, Guanqing Han, who had been keeping an eye on Dugu Xiaoyi's movements, appeared in the tent like a divine soldier. Ah, June Moxie, you're despicable, shameless. Why haven't you let go of Xiaoyi yet? Guanqing Han screamed in fear and turned around with a flushed face. Chapter 378. The two people in the tent were almost completely honest with each other. From the looks of it, it was obvious that June Moxie was using force, and Dugu Xiaoyi refused to comply, which resulted in such an awkward scene. Guanqing Han was originally with Dugu Xiaoyi, but Dugu Xiaoyi sneakily took out a jade flute and asked Guanqing Han to appraise it. Guanqing Han's greatest interest in this life was the art of playing the flute, so she naturally complied and took it. Before she had time to appraise it, Dugu Xiaoyi suddenly held her stomach and said that she needed to go to the toilet, and then rushed out of the tent impatiently. Guanqing Han didn't suspect anything. Moreover, she saw that Dugu Xiaoyi's face had turned red. It seemed as if she couldn't hold it in any longer. Guanqing Han snorted and let her go. She held the jade flute and carefully looked at it. Then, she tested the tone and waited for Dugu Xiaoyi to return. But after waiting for the first and second time, there was no sign of her, and after waiting for the third and fourth time, Guanqing Han could not help but worry and finally came out to look for her. She asked the soldiers along the way if they had seen Miss Dugu. The soldier pointed. Guanqing Han asked along the way, and then found out that Dugu Xiaoyi flew into June Moxie's tent. She could not help but feel funny, angry, and an indescribable feeling. She had clearly suggested that the two of them should accompany each other to see this guy, but she did not expect Dugu Xiaoyi to use this method to leave her alone and run over first. Since she was with June Moxie, there should be nothing wrong. So when Guanqing Han arrived at the tent, she hesitated for a moment and wanted to go back directly, but then she heard something strange inside, and Dugu Xiaoyi actually shouted for help. How could this be? Guanqing Han recalled June Moxie's image a few months ago, and her heart suddenly beat fast. Could it be? Dugu Xiaoyi's cries became more and more shrill, and she even started to cry. Guanqing Han finally made up her mind and barged in. Who knew that after barging in, he would actually see such an awkward scene? Guanqing Han suddenly felt that something in her heart was broken. She was completely disheartened. Tears flowed from her eyes. June Moxie, you disappoint me. No matter how Guanqing Han felt, June Moxie had lost his mind. He couldn't hear what she said at all. Even if he could, he wouldn't understand and wouldn't care. Big Sister Guan, please save me, boo-hoo. Dugu Xiaoyi cried and begged. She looked like a pear blossom in the rain, feeling wronged and pitiful. Guanqing Han was furious. You bastard! Let go of me! She rushed forward and wanted to push June Moxie to the side. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't push him away. Dugu Xiaoyi, who was under June Moxie, finally bent her leg and kicked hard. Guanqing Han cooperated and used all her strength to push June Moxie's body to the side, revealing half of Dugu Xiaoyi's body. It was sparkling and white, covered with little plum blossoms. It was the kiss marks that appeared on Dugu Xiaoyi's delicate skin under June Moxie's ravaging. June Moxie was still in a daze and didn't know how to use his own strength. Otherwise, even if there were 10 more Guanqing Han, it would still be useless. Dugu Xiaoyi was ashamed and scared. She took this opportunity to get up and threw herself into Guanqing Han's arms, crying loudly. What's going on? Guanqing Han quickly grabbed June Moxie's cloak and covered her delicate body. Before Dugu Xiaoyi could say anything, June Moxie pounced on her again like a hungry wolf. Dugu Xiaoyi screamed. In a panic, she wrapped the cloak tightly around her and scrambled to escape. The little girl was really scared today. June Moxie was like an arrow on a bowstring, but he suddenly lost his target. How could he bear it? He didn't know that the girl in front of him had changed into another person. He pounced on her and hugged her. Guan Xinghan was so angry that her delicate body trembled. She shouted, "June Moxie, you're crazy. You still want to?" Before she could finish her words, she suddenly saw that June Moxie's face was flushed red. His eyes were bloodshot and his gaze was bewildered. He didn't have his usual clarity. It was obvious that he had lost his rationality. She couldn't help but be shocked. What was going on? Although Guan Xinghan was a virgin, she was older and knew more than Dugu Xiaoi. Although she didn't notice it when she first came in, she could see the abnormality now. She also guessed what was going on with June Moxie, an aphrodisiac, and it looked like an extremely violent aphrodisiac. Otherwise, it wouldn't be like this. Guan Xinghan wanted to pull out her sword to scare June Moxie, but her hesitation was too late. June Moxie pounced on her like a wolf and hugged her. Then he opened his mouth and kissed her. Guan Xinghan was confused, embarrassed, and anxious. She pushed with all her might. But how could her strength be compared to June Moxie? Moreover, when Guan Xinghan saw that June Moxie was obviously tricked, she couldn't bear it and didn't know what to do. With June Moxie's current state, if she went out and he couldn't vent, how could he bear the violent effects of the aphrodisiac? His brain would definitely be fried, and his life might even be in danger. Guan Xinghan's face was usually cold and frosty. She had never been kind to June Moxie, but he was her brother-in-law after all, and he was the only descendant of the June family. Moreover, June Moxie had been wronged because of her. He had dared to become the enemy of the whole world in a fit of anger, and that image was still deeply engraved in her mind. Her heart, which had been lonely for more than 20 years, had also throbbed because of that. He was such an outstanding young man who was so affectionate to me. How could I just watch him be tortured like this? And there would be serious consequences. Jun Mo Xie had dared to oppose the Shui Hun Manor for his own sake. In fact, the Shui Hun Manor was like the sun in the sky at that time. He hadn't flinched at all, so how could she repay his deep friendship? The Jun family didn't care about my own family. In fact, they even wanted to send me away. But they were prepared to sacrifice themselves in order to protect me. How could she just watch the only descendant of the Jun family get tortured by an aphrodisiac? In fact, Jun Wuyi's adoptive father had been harassed by the Shui Hun Manor in every possible way for the sake of his own matters. He had even been framed by them and had almost died in the process. And he would have died in battle if someone hadn't helped him in secret. And all of this had been for her sake. Now that June Moxie has been poisoned, can I really walk away? June Moxie has had a good impression of me ever since I've arrived at the Jun family. In fact, he had even used his debauchee identity to express his feelings to me. So why? Only recently did she find out that his previous appearance was a complete disguise. Then why did he look like that? Why did he confess to me at that time? Now that I think about it, it's very rare. Was he really going to be completely indifferent to such a feeling? It's easy to find a priceless treasure, but it's hard to find a lover. What are the so-called geniuses of the so-called aristocratic families compared to Jun Moxie? I'm a free man now, but Guan Xinghan's heart was in turmoil for a moment. In fact, it seemed as if she had gone crazy. It had to be said that Jun Moxie's devotion was a one-sided misunderstanding of Guan Xinghan's own wishful thinking. There was no other reason than that this Mo Xie wasn't the same Mo Xie. Their bodies were the same, but their souls had been completely replaced by someone else's. The things that the previous Mo Xie had done before couldn't be attributed to the current Jun Moxie, but it seemed that even his body was different now. It was undeniable that the current Jun Moxie had a good impression of Guan Xinghan, but his feelings for this cold-blooded assassin were far from passionate. In fact, they were far from discussing marriage. It could even be said that with Jun Moxie's current temperament, even though he was unrestrained and scrupulous and unscrupulous, he would never take the initiative to confess his feelings. If it wasn't for the fact that a woman took the initiative to pursue him, or that the old man forced him to arrange a marriage, he might even grow old alone. Because the current mindset of Jun Moxie was still the mindset of the king of assassins in his previous life. Starting a family was an unbelievably extravagant thing for an assassin. Just as Guan Qing Han was hesitating suddenly, she was shocked. She looked at Jun Moxie's eyes, which were burning with passion. Suddenly, her heart was filled with tenderness. Forget it. Let me use this life to repay the Jun family's great kindness to me. Guan Qing Han quietly closed her eyes. Two streams of tears slowly flowed down her jade-like cheeks. She had already given up resisting. The little girl was panic-stricken. She quickly fled to her own tent. She changed her clothes and rested for a while. Then she calmed down. However, she still felt that her face and body were feverish. It's too scary. It's too scary. Oh my God. Dugu Xiaoyi patted her chest. She still had some lingering fear. She recalled Jun Mo Xie's ferocious appearance. It seemed as if he wanted to eat her alive. In fact, it seemed as if he wanted to swallow her whole. It's all thanks to Elder Sister Guan. Elder Sister Guan. Dugu Xiaoyi suddenly stood up. Her beautiful eyes widened to the limit. I escaped. But how could I forget about Elder Sister Guan? Elder Brother Mo Xie has already eaten the cooked rice medicine. If he were to hurt Elder Sister Guan, won't Elder Sister Guan suffer a lot? Wouldn't that be my sin? The more Dugu Xiaoyi thought about it, the more uneasy she became. She rushed out of her tent like a whirlwind. She disregarded everything else and used her lightness kung fu. Then, she madly rushed towards Jun Wui's tent. Jun Wui, Solitary Eagle, and the three Dongfang brothers were discussing the matter of withdrawing the troops. Then, they saw the tent's door open. Dugu Xiaoyi was gasping for breath as she rushed in. Third, Uncle Jun. Cough, cough, cough. Elder Brother Mo Xie is in trouble. He's in his tent. Elder, please go and take a look. If you're late, Elder Sister Guan will be in trouble. 8 chapters in 2 days. I did it. This month's leaflets will be issued in the form of end times of the month. I don't know how many times I'll be able to do it. I wonder if I'll be able to surpass the 15 leaflets in September, or even more. I've never issued a leaflet to ask for votes. This is my habit. It's also my insistence. However, as long as I break out, I'll issue a leaflet to ask for votes. This is also my affirmation of my own labor. Some brothers don't understand the timing of my publishing. They say that if you publish so many manuscripts at once, it will affect the effect of asking for votes. I'm helpless. I've never been a writer who writes quickly. Every time I break out, it means an all-nighter of overtime. I don't have a fast speed. I can only use time to accumulate a bit by bit. Last night, I wrote from 10 at night until 5 in the morning. After writing 10,000 words, I went to sleep with satisfaction. This afternoon, I woke up and went through the words I wrote last night. I revised every single sentence. Wrong sentences, typos, and even punctuation marks. I revised them all several times. Only when I fully approve of it will I upload it. This is not only my responsibility to everyone, but also my responsibility to myself. No one will want to read a book filled with typos and wrong sentences, right? I'm very confident that this book is definitely not the one with the fewest typos in Qidian. However, it's definitely at the top. I'm very proud of this. After I've finished editing, I began to upload the broken chapters. I won't say that it's been hard on you. I just hope that everyone can understand. Now that the second leaflet of the month is over, I'm reaching out to my brothers and sisters to ask for a few monthly votes. Everyone, please work together and lift up our evil monarch. Thank you, asking for monthly votes. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.